Election. My name is Paul Brothers alongside Heidi Petracek. Good evening, Heidi.
Good evening. Good to be here. Nice to sit next to you.
For sure, yeah. We are broadcasting live this evening on the main network here on Global Television until 10 p.m.
You can also find us online on the Global News app and on our streaming platforms. We will be here to bring you all the latest results and analysis as they come in.
Yes, indeed. And our Global News team is spread out right across the province, as you would expect, to bring you reaction from 3 of the main party headquarters.
Megan King is in Pictou at PC Party headquarters. Ella McDonald is at Liberal headquarters in Yarmouth, and Skye Bryden-Blom is in Halifax at NDP HQ.
And to help make sense of all this for us, the experts, Laurie Turnbull, a political science professor in the Faculty of Management at Dalhousie University, who is in our Ottawa studio tonight.
And with her is Global News chief political correspondent David Akin, who is keeping a close eye on each of the 55 races underway tonight. The polls have closed in all but one polling station, and we'll have more on that in a bit. But first, a brief explanation of what you'll see tonight. If you were watching online, click on your riding anytime to get up-to-the-minute results.
Yeah, and if you're watching us on television or on the app, you can see the results here on the right side of your screen as they are reported by Elections Nova Scotia this evening. And very important, everyone keeping their eyes on the bottom of your screen for the seat count. Right now it's at 0, but that's where the party is going to happen tonight. Each of the parties are hoping to get to 28 seats, Heidi. That's the magic number to form a majority government.
We are going to get you those results, of course, but Elections Nova Scotia has hit a bit of a snag. Yes. The opening of the polling station in Mushaboom in the riding of Eastern Shore was delayed this morning because Elections Nova Scotia says site workers forgot some supplies. Yeah,
good evening, everybody in Mushaboom. You've got an extra hour tonight, so it's staying open until 9 p.m., an hour later than other polling stations. Elections Nova Scotia says it won't report any results until all the polls are closed, but once that happens after 9 o'clock, Heidi, the results are expected to come in fast and furious.
Indeed, they are. But first, let's take a look at where we were before this election was called.
So after the 2021 election, the PCs held 31 seats in the legislature. The Liberals had 17 and the NDP had 6. Now, we can't forget Elizabeth Smith-McCrossan. She was the lone independent MLA representing Cumberland North. Since that time, 2 Liberals have crossed the floor of the legislature to join the Progressive Conservatives. Brendan McGuire joined the PCs to become Minister of Community Services last February. Then we have Fred Tilley, who crossed the floor of the Ledge just days before the election was called and is running now as a PC. So the PCs also gained a seat in the 2023 by-election in Preston, triggered after Angela Simmons decided to step down. Twyla Gross won that riding, bringing the total number of PC seats up to 34 heading into this election. The Liberals now have 14, the NDP with 6, and we still have that 1 independent. How do things look after tonight? We're about to find out. And let's go to the man in the tartan tie with a path to power. As we say good evening for the first time, David Akin. Good evening, sir.
Yeah, good to be with you, Paul and Heidi. And listen, can I just say something about this Elections Nova Scotia decision? I've been dying to get it off my chest. Dorothy Rice is the Chief Electoral Officer. It's her first time as a CEO, that's what they call Chief Electoral Officers, in Elections Nova Scotia. And she's made this decision that because the folks in Mushaboom, it's not just a Feist song, as it turns out, because the folks in Mushaboom have not yet had a chance to ultimately vote, no one else in the province, polls are already closed everywhere else, we can't release results. I've been covering provincial and federal elections for nearly 20 years, never seen a CEO take this decision. Polls open late all the time, federal, provincial, you name it, and the world carries on. Polls close at 8 o'clock, it's time to start releasing results, let people know how things are going, but not with Elections Nova Scotia this time. So this is unprecedented, in my view. This really doesn't happen a whole lot. I know Ms. Rice may have a precedent, but I just wanted to get that off my chest, guys. So listen. What's going to go on here tonight? Every party has an objective as they go into a campaign. The PCs obviously want to make sure that they hold that majority, that 28 seats needed for a majority. Liberals are kind of trapped. They're in between the PCs. They want to try and overtake the PCs, but they've got the NDP nipping at their heels. The NDP want to be official opposition. What I've got behind me is the riding map for tonight. And again, we won't have results till at least 9 p.m. Atlantic time, when the Mushaboom poll closes. That's where we're going to have to wait. But no one will have results quicker than us. We've got a direct pipeline to Elections Nova Scotia. We'll have them here. Let me take a look at 2021. This is where we finished in 2021. Okay, so let's take a look and let's see where the path to power might be for each of the parties. We start with, let's start with, again, 2021. So 34-14 is where we're at for the PCs. Looking up there, 34-14. PCs just got a hold. For the Liberals, when the Liberals won under Stephen McNeil in 2017, Where were those wins coming from? Well, McNeil, that's his riding right there, Annapolis. McNeil, we're not going to give him that seat. We're going to turn that Liberal red. He won the Valley. Boom. He won Chester St. Margaret's. He won both Lunenburgs. These two ridings in Hants County, in the last election, those are some of the closest races in the province. Liberals lost by this much. So let's put the two Hants County ridings back. Right here, Waverley, Fall River, Beaverbank. That's a suburban Halifax riding that Stephen McNeil won. Let's put that there. This riding right here, Eastern Shore. Eastern Shore since the 1970s is a bellwether. You win Eastern Shore, for them tonight. Given where the polls are, I think it's going to be a little tricky. Let's take a look at HRM. There's going to be a lot going on in HRM tonight. This is where we were, Halifax and area. Last time around, I mentioned the NDP is looking to overtake the Liberals at the very least. So right now they got 6. They want to be past the Liberals. How might that happen? Now we press the NDP button. I think you're going to see the target is some more right coming out of Halifax. Armdale, Fairview Clayton Park. So there's a couple right there. Do not be surprised if you see some NDP strength in the suburbs, specifically the two Sackville ridings, Sackville-Cobequid and Sackville-Uniacke up there. So now we're 12-10. The NDP are still 2 back. Now, in the HRM, one of the reasons Tim Houston called this election, he wants more PC seats in HRM. Hammonds Plains, Lucasville. They've been gunning for that. The Premier was there just on Friday. The PCs are hoping to pick Hammonds Plains, Lucasville up. Both Cole Harbour seats, they're looking for that. And now what do we have? Boom, that's it. If the Liberals cannot defend what they have in HRM, they are in real danger of falling to 3rd place, and the NDP and Claudia Chender would overtake them. Those are just some of the scenarios that all the campaigns are aware of this. The PCs are definitely looking for some ridings in suburban Halifax. I didn't mention Bedford Basin, where their star candidate Tim Outhit is running, a former HRM councillor. So that's where the PCs are. The NDP are coming at the Liberals in HRM, and the poor old Liberals are getting squeezed on both ends. They have to play defense there, even as I said, trying to win all over elsewhere in the province. Real tough night I had to think for Churchill and the Liberals.
And David, I think that's why we saw some heavy campaigning, even up until the last minute in the Halifax area by the PCs and the NDP, and a little trip to Cape Breton as well. I think there's some very strategic campaigning that's been going on here. So we're definitely keeping an eye on that.
And do you know where Claudia Chender was today? I'll tell you, I know the answer to this. That's the NDP leader right here in Fairview Clayton Park. That's right. That's where Patricia Arab has been the MLA, the Liberal MLA, for a long time, for more than a decade. She was in Stephen McNeil's cabinet. But before that, Fairview Clayton Park in various formats, used to be called Halifax Fairview, that's Alexa McDonough's old stomping ground. That used to be solid NDP territory. Graham Steele, Dexter's finance minister, used to hold that until Patricia Arab won it. And so today, Lena Hamid is the New Democrat candidate, and Claudia Chender was there, push a last push to see if the NDP can take Fairview Clayton Park. And one thing, guys, one of the things I track in every election is the leader's itinerary. The leader is a scarce resource in a campaign. They don't want to waste the leader's time going to ridings or regions where there's no hope. And so Claudia Chender has focused heavily on HRM. Quick trip up to Cape Breton. She's also visited Lunenburg. My NDP campaign sources say, Lunenburg is like sort of tier 2, would be nice to have for the NDP tonight. But I think they want to show some strength in Lunenburg, even if they don't win. And there's 2 cabinet ministers in both Lunenburg ridings. So the NDP setting the table maybe for the next election when they can challenge for power. Tonight, they're challenging the Liberals to be the official opposition.
Well, you mentioned the leaders and their time is money, essentially, in this election. PC leader Tim Houston was in Bedford. You mentioned Bedford Basin, running Tim Outhit, the longtime municipal councillor, looking to pick up a seat there in what was Kelly Regan's longtime district there in Bedford Basin. And also Bedford South, too. Braden Clark, the incumbent for the Liberals, the PCs, they can make gains there as well, David.
Yeah, and I just pulled up Bedford Basin, and again, we don't have results because of elections Nova Scotia. You don't need to turn the channel anywhere. Doris Robbins worked for Kelly Regan. Doris is well known to the constituency. She was a constituent assistant. She's held senior positions within the Nova Scotia Liberal Party. She used to work in the Premier's office, in fact. She's very much a known quantity in Liberal circles, and constituents may have got to know her as Kelly Regan's constituent assistant. But you're right, Tim Outhit, also very well-known
I do want to mention too, though,
riding.
just to mention NDP, they're running former Nova Scotia Teachers Union President Ryan Lutz is a very well-known name as well. Now, this is another sticking point I have, is running candidates in districts where they don't live in the district. He, I believe, lives in Dartmouth. Maybe this is a storyline for later in the night, but he's running in Bedford Basin, but he's got his name on the ballot, David.
Yeah, and there's two actual Nova Scotia Teachers Unions presidents. Ryan is one of them, as well in, I'm going to try and get this right, Sackville Cobequid. Paul Wozni is a former NSTU president as well. There's a lot of teachers on the ballot. I was just going through because we were getting going. A lot of teachers on the ballot. A lot of healthcare workers on the ballot from all parties. Healthcare is obviously a top issue, and you've got nurses on the ballot, you've got registered massage therapists on the ballot, patient advocates. 3 people who worked at Yarmouth Regional Hospital are running, including the guy challenging Zach Churchill. Nick Hilton is a nurse at Yarmouth Regional. So, so that's really interesting to see the people working in the healthcare field. We all know healthcare is like #1. Issue for voters, and people working in the field are saying, I'm standing up and putting my name on a ballot.
All right. Well, David, thank you so much for your insight. And of course, we'll be checking in with David throughout the show for that analysis at the big map. I love seeing how the colors have changed over the years and just seeing the progress. So once we start getting results after 9 o'clock again, things are really going to light up on his screen. Let's take the temperature at the party leader headquarters throughout the province now. Let's go to Megan King, who's in Pictou, of course, the home of Premier Tim Houston. And that's where we find her now at PC party headquarters. Megan.
Yeah, good evening, Paul and Heidi. It's a lot of fun here, a lot of excitement as people start to trickle in here at PC headquarters. We're in New Glasgow. It is an area that has been historically blue, so a lot of people just being excited after this month of campaigning. We've got volunteers, supporters, and even some candidates. I just had a conversation with Danny McGilvery, who is the Pictou Centre candidate. That, of course, happening after the previous MLA for the area stepped down. That's Pat Dunn, not going for re-election. And everyone is just ready to see those election results come in. Of course, we do have that delay that you mentioned because of elections in Nova Scotia. But once we get those numbers rolling in after things close at 9 p.m., very excited here to see the results. They're hoping to regain that majority government that they saw last term, begin that term again, and now a bit of a different mandate that they'll be working under. In 2021, they were elected with healthcare in mind. Now they want to continue that work, but cost of living, housing, those becoming top of mind issues for a lot of Nova Scotians. They saying that this is something that they want to put past Nova Scotians. Before they're re-elected, they want to show what their ideas are, get the Nova Scotians' opinion, and if they do receive that majority again, the people have spoken. So I'll have updates for you and all of our viewers tonight as people get more excited and more people start trickling in when it comes to the PC results. I'll have more soon, but back to you for now.
All right, good stuff. Thanks for this, Megan King at PC headquarters in Pictou tonight. And let's continue our whip around coverage. We'll go to Ella MacDonald. Ella is at Liberal headquarters in Yarmouth. Of course, the home riding of Liberal leader Zach Churchill, who's the incumbent, and that riding has been held by Churchill since the 2010 by-election. And what's the mood there tonight? Ella, good evening to you. Welcome to the show.
Good evening, Paul, Heidi. Well, we're off to a slow start here in Yarmouth, but we have had some residents trickle in. We're up to, I think, about 15 people in the house right now. They're all eager. They're all here early. I spoke with party members earlier today, and they say they're optimistic. You know, they believe in their platform, they believe in their leader, and they're looking forward to seeing those results come in tonight. A little later than we would have hoped, but still on the way. Now, I'll be here to bring you some local voices throughout the next hour or so, but I think the big question for the Liberals tonight is if they'll be able to hold on to that official opposition title up against the NDP, and that's what we're all really watching. So the mood is optimistic, but a little tense, I'd say. I'm going to send it back to you.
All right, thank you very much, Ella. Yeah, I think everyone is kind of on pins and needles, just waiting for things to get going. And
there was a little more chatter in the PC headquarters than the Liberal headquarters, not to foreshadow.
That's true. That's true. Well, maybe they're still out, you know, last-minute preparations for tonight. And I know, as she mentioned, it is kind of going to be interesting to see about the official opposition here. The NDP, of course, has been jockeying for that. Yep. Let's check in with Skye Bryden-Blom, who's at NDP headquarters in Halifax. Skye.
Yes, Heidi, I am here, and I don't know if you can see behind me, but people have started to trickle in, and the excitement here is growing at the NDP headquarters in downtown Halifax. Earlier today, the leader, Claudia Chender, she was out campaigning during the final hours, knocking on doors in the Clayton Park area. Now, just looking at the campaign as a whole, there are really three main key areas that the NDP honed in on. They include the cost of living, affordable housing, and improving health care. Now, if we're going to break that down, let's look at the party promises that really hone in on those themes. They want to remove the tax on essentials like groceries and introduce a gas tax holiday. They also want to build more affordable housing for renters and ban fixed-term leases. In addition to that, they want to build more collaborative family doctor practices. At dissolution, the NDP held 6 seats, and obviously they're looking to build on that in this election. And recent polling suggests they could be in a tight race with the Liberals when it comes to forming the official opposition. Stay tuned with us through the night because I'll have more updates from right here. Until then, back to you at the desk.
All right, thanks for this, Sky. It's a Global Sky Brad and Blom at NDP headquarters in downtown Halifax, Heidi. So we've got the path to power from David. We've set the scene at the headquarters around the province. Let's say we take our first break of the evening.
Okay, let's
right.
do that. It's a quick one, though.
Exactly.
Stay with us here on Global News for Decision Nova Scotia 2024. We'll continue after this.
Welcome back to Global News coverage of Decision Nova Scotia, our coverage of the Nova Scotia provincial election. Paul Brothers, Heidi Petracek with you on the desk in our studios in downtown Halifax. How are we doing, Heidi?
We're doing well. I mean, it's early into it. We are waiting for the official release of results from Elections Nova Scotia because of that mushaboom delay. But we can work with it. Gives us lots of time to talk about the issues at hand. And thank you so much for joining us here on Global News.
Yeah, and you know, we were going through rehearsals all weekend. We were expecting the results maybe would trickle in at 8:30, 8:20, 8:40. And then today we come to find out, nope, it's going to be 9 o'clock because the polling station in Mushaboom, Eastern Shore, if you're familiar with Taylor Head Provincial Park, just out past that is where Mushaboom is. And they had a delayed opening until 9 a.m., so the polls close at 9 p.m. So you still got 40 minutes if you're in Mushaboom.
If you're in Mushaboom, go now.
And you need to head out and be part of the show and cast a ballot, exercise your democratic right. You can go do that right now. So we'll get the results in fast and furious at 9 o'clock. Looking forward to that. While we do that, we'll bring the experts back in. It's David Akin and it's Laurie Turnbull. And we're going to talk about the snap election call. That was kind of a lot of talk when the snap election call was called. That whole storyline lost some steam in the last month or so. But David, Laurie, what do you folks think of the snap election call?
Yeah, and so this might be, I'm great to have Laurie here with us. You know, Laurie studies political science for a living. She knows all the ins and outs. I just punditize on it or whatever the thing is. But one of the things about a snap election, voters don't care that much about it. After a couple of days, that passes. But it's a real big deal for campaigns. And I want to give you some illustration because campaigns and parties need to find candidates, need to find good candidates. The PCs recruited a great candidate in Bedford Basin and Tim Outhit. We'll probably be talking about him tonight. But I want to show you a couple of ridings for the Liberals and the New Democrats where, you know, candidate recruitment for these ridings may happen. There might be something we can learn about that, okay? I want to start, first of all, in Guysborough-Tracadie. Remember, this is where the Liberals won this in 2017, okay? So this has a history of Liberal. The candidate is George Grant. We don't have a picture of George Grant. If you go to the Liberal website, there is no picture of George Grant. But I dug it up, and George Grant gave an interview to the Guysborough Journal. He's in his 80s. And the party phoned him up and said, George, we hear you're a Liberal. We need somebody's name on the ballot. Can you put his name on the ballot? This is George talking to the Greensboro Journal, and he says, sure, go ahead, but I'm not campaigning. I'm in my 80s. I've got mobility problems, and as he told the Guysborough Journal, I am not being chased around by dogs. So that's George Grant. Good for him doing his civic duty, but that's a problem for the Liberal Party in Nova Scotia. They weren't prepared with candidates in a riding that they'd won just 2 elections ago. And I want to talk as well about Cape Breton East. Joe Ward is the Liberal candidate here. Folks up in Cape Breton may remember he was on the ballot for the mayor's job in CBRM. He finished second. But he was not named by the Liberals until a couple of weeks into the campaign. Liberals having trouble running against the mental health and addictions minister, Brian Comer. Well, Joe Ward fancies himself a political pundit, and he said a lot about politics. PCs took him 2 minutes to dig up the fact that last spring, he was calling Zach Churchill a weak, ineffectual leader. He called Zach Churchill a frat boy. He's running for Zach Churchill. That's vetting that a Liberal Party, if they'd had time, should have done. I only single those two out, Lori, because vetting and candidate recruitment fundamental to getting ready for an election, and didn't happen for the Liberals here.
Oh, David.
Okay, go ahead.
If the Liberals were caught off guard by this election call, they were the only ones. This was the worst kept secret in the history of time. Everybody was talking about the fact that Houston was aligning himself to go to election because he didn't want to have to run with Pierre Poilievre as a prime minister.
Right.
He wants to run with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, because we can see even in the polls when people are dissatisfied with what's going on, the fact that Houston stands to win a big majority tonight is not because everybody thinks everything's going amazingly. It's because those who are disgruntled are taking it out on Justin Trudeau. And so for Houston, this was an obvious call. And so I think, honestly, if the Liberals didn't get their ducks in a row in time, they have no one to blame but themselves, to be honest.
And this will be the questions Liberals may have to ask themselves. Why wasn't the party prepared? New Democrats, on the other hand, I don't think they were as surprised. New Democrats I've talked to, this is what they're saying now. And they did have a plan they executed on, but their candidate recruitment elsewhere in the province was not necessarily up to snuff. And I just want to point out a couple. Paul, you mentioned this a minute ago, people running in places they don't live. One is for the New Democrat candidate in Truro Bible Hill. The New Democrat is Kalen Piggott. Now, Kalen's got an interesting story. He lives in downtown Halifax. He's a barista. He was working at a place called Java Blend, and he tried to organize a union. And he got laid off, he and two other employees. And this got Kalen into politics, and he put his hand up, and he's now trying to help New Democrats out who fight for unions by putting his name on a ballot in Truro. All parties sometimes have to do that. Who wants to help us? Put your name on a ballot up there. Same thing if we look over here in Digby-Annapolis. That's the Labor Minister is the incumbent. Here's Shannon Long is the New Democrat candidate. She too lives in downtown Halifax. She's a freelance artist. She's a skateboarder, and she's captain of her roller derby team. Very cool, Shannon. She doesn't live in the riding. The NDP does not really have much of a chance here, but Shannon Long also saying, hey, New Democrats, we need a hand. Who can get on a ballot? It's important for parties to show in this way that they're running everywhere in the province, even though they're essentially conceding that they don't have a hope in certain parts of the province. But it's still important that they're showing up there.
Is it though?
Well,
I mean, it's an interesting question, right? Because I think for political parties, they are focusing on how many seats can we win. Mm-hmm. And if they're looking at, in this case, I think for the NDP and the Liberals, they can read the writing on the wall as much as you and I can. They can see that this is very likely a good night for Tim Houston and the Progressive Conservatives. And so when you're living that, what are you doing? You're trying to position yourself so that you're first in the opposition parties. And so if you're doing that, does it make more sense to go for the ridings that you think you'll win and spend all of your resources, the leader's time, the money, all of that, trying to make sure that you get as many votes as you can in the ridings that you think you can flip, and then that ends up being a better base for you to build to the next election? And I think that's what these two parties are doing.
And I want to just go back, guys. Remember, 2021 here, that's what you're looking at, not today's results, 2021. What you just said, Lori, let's illustrate that. In the HRM is where the NDP concentrated their leaders' time and their resources, but poor old Zach Churchill, he did have to run around most of the province. He had to be up in Cape Breton. He's got to be down in the south. That stretches their resources thin. And as you said, Claudia Chender and the NDP, is focusing where they think they can win.
While we're on this topic too, David, just let me interject for a second.
Yeah.
The phone lines have kind of been lit up here on Talk Radio in Halifax about the fact that the NDP are running 7 candidates around the province that are from the south end of Halifax.
That's
from
right.
Tip to tip.
But
7.
You know what I would say? And the PCs pointed this out. They were, isn't this terrible? PCs have done it too.
Right.
Sometimes they've been down in the dumps and they got to pull somebody out. Liberals have done it. Every party sometimes has to do it. But, as long as the candidate shows up at a local debate and tries to participate in the local campaign, voters in Truro or in Digby in this case can make their own assessments of the candidate.
It's up to the voter. It's absolutely up to the voters. If they decide that the right person is somebody who doesn't live in the riding, it's completely up to the voter, and we will see what happens.
Yeah. So everybody's going to have their own ideas about this poll. Some feel very strongly, you ought to live in the riding. Others particularly in metro ridings, right? Because a lot of people will work downtown but live in the suburbs. And so what community you're necessarily connected to? You can make the case
I'm
for
on
both.
camp live in the riding, I think.
All right.
Not to be
Camp live in the
opinionated,
riding.
but-
We'll put Paul there. There's our first vote of the night, folks. I don't know what color to put it on. but
There's
that's our
goose
first
eggs on
vote
the
of
seat
night.
count, so yeah.
Yeah.
This just in.
And don't forget, can I just remind people once again who just might be tuning in, Elections Nova Scotia has said we can't get any results until 9. Polls are closed everywhere but one spot, Mushaboom. And when Elections Nova Scotia releases those results at 9, they're going to have all 120,000 advance votes, but they've been counting the ballots since 8 o'clock. So at 9 o'clock, like this is going to be a unique experience for me. It's going to be like, whoa, tidal wave of
Fire hose.
tidal wave of votes, and we're probably going to have a very good idea of where the outcome might go.
It'll be fast
at 9 o'clock.
Yep.
So, but we have to. I get frustrated when the polls.
Well,
are
you
closed
mentioned
and I have no
Mushaboom.
votes.
You mentioned Mushaboom, David, and you did steal my Mushaboom thunder. I was going to say that Feist had a song called Mushaboom, and I had a whole thing planned.
Were you going to sing Mushaboom?
I was
No?
not, but David Aiken stole my Mushaboom thunder.
All right.
Get him back before the end of the show. I didn't know he was that hip that he knew who Feist even was, but here we are.
How dare you? Of course he knows who Feist is. Thank
Paul's
you to
dissing
David
me.
and Lori. Right. We will be checking back in with them, of course. And as David mentioned, once those results start coming in at 9 o'clock when Elections Nova Scotia releases them, they're going to come in fast and furious.
Yeah.
Hang on to yourselves. Put on your seatbelts. I hope David has some running shoes on because he's going to be dancing at that board for sure. So be sure to stick with us for that. And of course, as we wait, so do folks at campaign headquarters throughout Nova Scotia. And what makes a campaign run oftentimes are campaign volunteers. They're important. Megan King is at PC headquarters in Pictou right now with a campaign volunteer who's been working hard. Megan.
Absolutely, Heidi. I want to give you a bit of a behind the scenes of just what gets a campaign running. I've got with me Tyler Cameron. He has been a part of 25 campaigns over the years with the PCs. Can you tell me what makes this one special?
Well, first of all, welcome to Pictou County. It's great to have you. This has been a really exciting campaign. We've had great candidates all across the province, solid policy that people could understand, and a leader that is popular after 3.5 years in government.
And I guess when we look at this campaign in particular, I mean, it has been a bit of a whirlwind. What have you heard from people knocking on doors?
I've been all over the province, and it's affordability. It's improvements in healthcare. People are starting to see that big boat turn around, but it does take a while. And they want solid leadership, a premier and a leader that takes accountability, takes action, and gets things done. I think that's why Premier Houston's been so popular during this campaign and over the past 3.5 years.
And it all comes down to today.
Yes.
This is, fruits of your labor. I'm wondering, what do you want to see? What do you want your result to look like tonight?
Well, listen, any election, it's about people, and it's about what the voters want. We've had a majority government the last 3.5 years. A renewed mandate is what we're asking for tonight. It doesn't matter the seat count, but a strong mandate from the people is what I think the PC party and the leader of the PC party, Tim Houston's looking for.
And we're going to find out very soon. Thank you so much for your time,
Absolutely.
Tyler.
Thanks for coming.
I really appreciate it. I'll head it back to you now in studio, Heidi and Paul, but I'll have more updates as they come. Very exciting atmosphere in this room tonight. Back to you for now.
All right, thanks for this, Megan King at PC headquarters in Pictou for us throughout the evening as well. Check in back with her in a few minutes. First, let's go back to Yarmouth, shall we? Ella MacDonald is at Liberal headquarters for us throughout the evening. And I understand, Ella, you're joined by a Liberal campaign co-chair, so take it away.
That's right, Paul. I'm here with Heather Chiasson, who is the Liberal campaign co-chair. Tell me, Heather, leading up to tonight, how has campaigning gone for the Liberals?
We feel very good about our campaign. We've got some wonderful candidates. Everyone has worked very hard. The person who's worked harder than anyone is our leader, Zach Churchill. He's so incredibly energetic, and we feel good about our campaign. We'll see what happens tonight.
And staying on that topic of Churchill himself, Houston throughout the last month has really tried to tie Churchill to Trudeau in a means to kind of make him less of a viable option for voters. Tell me, what's your take on that?
I think it works for Tim Houston. He chose to do that, obviously, to try to tie us to what's happening in Ottawa, which really isn't the case at all. We don't control Ottawa. We don't tell them what to do. And Mr. Houston has had a majority and can deal with Ottawa. Sometimes they say in politics it's good to have an enemy, and he's chosen Justin Trudeau clearly.
And earlier on our show, we were talking about the repercussions of that snap election call. Now, tell me, what's your opinion on that? Because I know the Liberals did have a good idea that this election call was going to be made, but it was not on the date promised.
No, it was not on the date promised. And of course, everyone knows that it was the first bill passed by Mr. Houston. And here we are with the Christmas trees in the background, and it's pretty cold outside. It's not July. So that was a surprise to us and to everyone. But we've dealt with it, and we've dealt with it certainly as best as we can. There's a lot of work finding candidates, ordering signs, and so a snap election makes that more complicated.
It certainly is a lot of work, I'm sure. And just to kind of finish off, what are you looking forward to out of tonight?
Well, we're looking forward to the results. We've worked hard across the province, every single riding, so we're anxious to have the results, and we'll see what happens.
Well, there you have it. Thank you so much, Heather. I really appreciate it. Heidi, Paul, I'm going to send it back to you.
Thank you so much, Ella. Really appreciate it. Ella McDonald there in Yarmouth, Nova Scotia, Liberal campaign headquarters. Let's continue on now. Well, let's go to Skye Bryden-Blom, who's at NDP headquarters in Halifax, and she's with a campaign advisor for the Nova Scotia NDP, Brandon Rose. Skye.
Yes, I am, and he is a longtime volunteer with the NDP. I know you've been volunteering since 2011, currently seeing really good energy here. The room is starting to get more packed. Yeah. How are you feeling?
Feeling good. I mean, feeling energized. It's not an election that anybody necessarily thought was coming, so you kind of get energized quick, and you get out there and you knock on doors, and it's been energizing, and it's energizing in here too.
And I'm just wondering too, you've been volunteering since 2011. You know, what is different this time around?
What's different this time around? I mean, the biggest difference is we have Claudia. Claudia is a force of nature. I mean, everybody got to see her performance at the debate. Everybody who's been lucky enough to meet her on the doorsteps. It's been an introduction for her. This is the first chance, I think, that Nova Scotia's had a chance to meet Claudia. If you meet Claudia, you like Claudia, you want to see her again. And as much as I think sometimes people ruminate about elections or whatever else, I mean, it's our chance. We have a democracy. We're lucky to have a democracy. It's our chance to meet the people who make our laws. It's important, and when you get to meet people like Claudia on the doorstep, it makes it, I think, a little bit more exciting, engaging, and I think she's done a good job.
And you've said the word people quite a few times, and that's such a key piece of this election when it comes to the challenges that Nova Scotians are facing. So for you, you know, watching the NDP campaign unfold, how has that been trying to meet those challenges? I
mean, the challenges, everybody knows the challenges so far. I mean, there's an affordability problem in Nova Scotia, and Claudia's been talking about it nonstop. Nova Scotians are worried about how they're going to access primary care, and Claudia's been talking about how every Nova Scotian deserves a family doctor. It's been an issue for an election after election after election. It doesn't go away. Hopefully, we'll start to see some movement here. But you need a functioning government, you need a functioning democracy, and part of those things is having not just a strong government, but also people who can hold you to account. And I think that's a skill of Claudia's. I think we saw it in the debates. I think we'll continue to see it. She's a fighter. She knows her stuff, and we like to hear from her.
Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate that, and for your insight. Heading back to you guys at the desk.
All right, Skye at NDP headquarters in downtown Halifax for us tonight. And if you believe the polling, of course, a lot of people saying this could be a PC majority again, but there's an interesting subplot on who's going to form that opposition party, right, Heidi?
Exactly, and for both the parties, the Liberals and the NDP, of course, the leaders are running their first election.
Yeah, that's
really.
right.
So it is a test both of their parties and their leadership and their campaign strategy. And I think that's what a lot of people are really going to be looking at once those numbers start appearing on the screen. The countdown is on, and once it happens, boy, it is going to happen. So hang on to your seats.
Yeah, we're looking for those zeros to disappear right around 9 o'clock, and hour number 2 is when things are going to happen. So get your popcorn ready. We'll get the break. Decision Nova Scotia continues here on Global News, our coverage of the Nova Scotia provincial election. Thanks so much for watching. Right back after this.
This is Decision Nova Scotia 2024 here on Global News. Heidi Petracek here with Paul Brothers, holding down the proverbial fort tonight as we await results in this election. There is a delay if you missed it. 9 p.m. is when Elections Nova Scotia is going to release results, and that's when you'll see our screen lighting up both on the right side of your screen and at the bottom with all the results. They're going to come in quickly, so hang on for that. The reason being is that there was a slight delay in the Mushaboom voting polling station. They opened late at 9 a.m., so they're staying open until 9 p.m. for
As the
voting.
story goes, they were missing some supplies, so they had to wait an hour to get those supplies to open at 9, so then they give voters an extra hour in that Eastern Shore district around Mushaboom to vote until 9 p.m., and then the results come in, of course. So we look forward to that in about 20 minutes' time. So it does give us some time to kind of set the scene for the entire evening before we get inundated with results, right? So we got some time to talk over some things that have been on some people's minds over the course of the past month, Heidi. So we bring Lori and David back into the conversation to talk more about voter turnout. My question is, Elections Nova Scotia's decision not to release these voter information cards based on the impending Canada Post strike, the impact of that potentially on voter turnout. Guys, if you want to take that, and maybe we'll have a little debate on that right now.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't actually thought about that, but I've heard a lot of people grumble a little bit about that. You want to give voters every opportunity to know where to vote, and take away one less opportunity is probably a bad thing. The early voter turnout numbers, about 160,000 people voted ahead of time, and that's down about 10 or 15% from 2017 or 2021. 2021 was a pandemic election. I don't know. What do you make of the turnout that we know so far?
Right. I mean, I think it's worth considering that in 2021, because it was a pandemic election, I can remember going to the polls, everybody's masked up and everything else. There would have been a strong incentive at that point for people to go to the polls early, get it done, go when you're not going to have like as much of a crowd of people. And so it's possible that the advanced poll was a bit inflated at that point. It doesn't seem troublesome to me at this moment. Like I don't think what we can see at the advanced poll is predicting a lower voter turnout than we saw in the last election yet. We'll see what happens.
You've seen elections, I've seen elections. The most notable one for me is the last Ontario election, where voter turnout was very low, and that was just fine for the incumbent PCs. That's Doug Ford's government. Low voter turnout tends to favor an incumbent. Incumbents know that if there's a lot of activity, that's probably people coming out to vote for change. And it seemed to be, can you call it a quiet election? I mean, that was the sense I got. It was kind of a quiet election. Even though it was a surprise election, it was a bit of a quiet election. And again, that probably benefits the incumbent, Tim Houston.
100%. I mean, I think, like going to your point about the last election in Ontario, the voter turnout in 2022 in Ontario was 43.5% or 43.6%, which is significantly less than half of eligible voters, and that's not what we want to see. But again, when you've got an incumbent that is probably going to win again, the impetus to come out and vote, like that real pressure to think, I'm going to come out and do this, whether it's for the incumbent or somebody else, when the election feels like a foregone conclusion, it's harder to mobilize people on any side of the ballot. And so I think that is something that is creeping in for the parties tonight, is are you able, when it looks like Houston's going to get a majority and the real fight is about who forms the opposition, are all of the parties going to have a bit of a challenge in terms of trying to mobilize that vote?
And this is where the fight on the left side, the NDP Liberal classic fight is this. Liberals, when they see a potential Conservative win, will try to scare those New Democrats and say, only the Liberals can stop those scary Conservatives. I didn't see much of that. And so I think in this election, because you're right, everybody said Houston's winning, New Democrats can say, I'm voting my conscience, I'm not worried about the Liberals, and that might benefit Claudia Chender this time around.
I'm really glad you mentioned that. I don't see a fear factor in this election at all.
Right.
I think that, in fact, it's the opposite, where you can look at the promises and the platforms at each of the three major parties, and there's so much overlap that honestly, it's hard to tell them apart sometimes. And if that's the case, how are you scaring anybody away from your opponent when you're promising some of the same things and you could literally kind of mix and match your platforms? Like, that totally takes away the ability of any party to say, oh God, you can't trust this guy because they're basically promising very similar things.
This is something, of course, we watch federal politics too, and you look at the polls are very good for Pierre Poilievre, and you could see the Liberals are going to try to say that Poilievre is scary, and Democrats may not believe it. They go, well, I'm voting Democrat. That's for a year from now. We'll be here talking about that. One of the other things too, just quickly on the new e-balloting. If I was in Nova Scotia, I would have absolutely voted using that pad just for the experience. It looks like an interesting new way of getting recording a vote. There's still paper ballots, but good for Elections Nova Scotia in this case, trying something a little new, trying to be innovative here.
I think it's really good actually to see, there's a lot of questions about whether people are comfortable with e-ballots. Is that something that we want to see more? Are people going to trust that? There have been examples of that happening at the municipal level in Canada where there was an issue. You have to extend the voting time because something's gone wrong. And so what's people's tolerance level to see how that all manages? But I think it's a good idea to kind of do a bit of a soft launch and an advanced poll. Don't put the whole election on e-ballot right away. Just kind of have a bit of a measured approach to see how it works.
Yeah, exactly. Guys, Paul, Heidi, remember at the beginning of this show, I sort of was like stamping my feet about Elections Nova Scotia decision to hold all these things. Yeah. Well, I can tell you on my social media feeds, and I like social media, don't get me wrong, that most of my followers, they're on the side of Elections Nova Scotia. They think that's a perfectly sensible decision to hold the results until everybody has a chance to vote without knowing how other people voted. So I've got some folks in Western Canada who are watching tonight, and they say, we hate it out in Western Canada when we know how Atlantic Canadians have already voted before their polls close. So there's one bit of both sides on this. I personally want to see the results, but many people going, that's fine. We can wait an hour.
Well, it gives us a chance to get to know each other more.
We get a chance to know each other more.
Exactly,
absolutely.
Right.
Listen to a little more feist, and yes, Paul,
exactly.
I do know who. Yes,
yes.
Mushaboom, I can groove to that any day of the week.
And as hip as I like the sound over here, I enjoy the paper ballot. I didn't do the iPad e-ballot thing for the last 2 weeks.
Really?
I like to go get the experience of it today. Went and voted in Bedford Presbyterian Church, Nelson's Landing Boulevard. Good morning, or good evening. Pardon me, morning show guy. Good evening to everybody who was there at that office today for the paper ballot.
Yeah,
old
exactly.
school.
And of course, with e-voting, there are always questions about security, and as David mentioned, you do get a paper receipt when you vote electronically on the tablet in advance polls, as they did here in Nova Scotia, and then they take that receipt that has your vote recorded on it, put it in an envelope, put it in a secure location. If they need to do a recount, they have a paper copy. But it is something that is new here, and it will be interesting to see where it moves from here.
But with no voter information cards, they could have used today a day to have that e-balloting where you could just go vote at any station that was close to you instead of having to say, you know what, you can't vote here. Your voting station is 40 kilometers down the road at the other one.
But they could register it electronically at any spot.
Anyway.
Interesting. It will be interesting to see how it develops from this election forward, depending on the results that happen tonight. Let's check in on PC Party headquarters right now, where Megan King is, and where I know folks are anxiously awaiting the results there at the home of Tim Houston, the man who called this election in the first place. Megan, and I know you have a guest with you.
Definitely, yes, Heidi. A lot of excitement here still. I know, waiting with anticipation, absolutely. And someone that has a bit of a break this time around because he isn't a candidate. We're talking to Pat Dunn, former Pictou Centre MLA. A bit of a break this time with no horse in the running.
Oh, it was very relaxing going out with a lot of my colleagues, knocking on doors and so on. There's definitely no stress in me this time.
Gotta love it, that it makes it a little bit easier and maybe a little bit more fun. Yeah. When you were door knocking with your former colleagues, can you tell me what were people wanting? What were you hearing from the folks?
Oh, once again, affordability was one of the key issues on the doorsteps, and of course, health. The concern for health will not go away. It's something that the PCs will be working on for years to come. But affordability, I was surprised the amount of people speaking about that. It's their first topic on the doorsteps.
Do you think that maybe shows a change in what Nova Scotians need right now?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I think that has become one of the top priorities for the province. And everyone's well aware of the the lack of housing and so on, and all the efforts by all kinds of different groups across the province trying to rectify that.
When you're not running this time around in Pictou Centre, but Danny McGilvery is. Any thoughts on him as a candidate here and what you're hoping for tonight?
Yes, well, I'm good friends with Danny. Danny was mayor of Stellarton for the past 8 years, and I had a great rapport with Danny as an MLA working in Pictou Centre with not only Danny as mayor, but also his office. So again, I wish him the best, and I feel very confident that he will be a big winner tonight.
Absolutely. I also want to hear a little about municipalities. That relationship is very important. The province and municipalities having to work together. Does that become a benefit when we see there are quite a few candidates that are former councillors or mayors, as you say?
Well, I think it's a great advantage for a councillor, a municipal councillor coming into cabinet or coming into our caucus. It's just their background knowledge of that level of government and you know, a learning curve at the provincial level. So I think it's a great advantage and advantageous to have a member with those attributes.
Most definitely. Well, thank you very much for your time, and now you get to go back to enjoying yourself.
Yeah, I'll soon be counting those numbers.
Exactly that, and so will we. Thank you very much for your time again. But Heidi and Paul, I'll get back to you when those numbers start getting counted very, very soon. Clearly, everyone in this room is waiting in anticipation. Back to you for now.
All right, thanks for this, Megan. And you can tell Pat Dunn,
So
longtime
relaxed.
politician, most relaxed we've ever seen him, you know. Pictou Centre. And we could say, too, that riding is considered by most to be a safe Tory territory. Danny McGilvery running there. Last time someone other than a PC elected there was back in the NDP sweep of 2009. So got to go back a bit of a ways.
The orange wave.
Yeah, so we'll see if that turns blue in about 10 minutes' time as that countdown clock just counts down now to 9 o'clock. And we continue to whip around to all the leaders and the party headquarters. Let's go to Ella MacDonald once again in Yarmouth at Liberal headquarters. Ella.
Well, Paul, yes, that countdown is on, and we're watching very closely with about 9 minutes left to go. I'm joined here right now by David Solos, who is Zach Churchill's official agent. Now, David, I understand that you and Zach date way back. Tell me about that and why you decided to get involved with the Liberal Party.
Well, I've known Zach since before he was in kindergarten, and I was his elementary school principal, and I watched him develop into a natural leader. He's always had a commitment to the people of the community, and I've seen him in the current role that he's in work so hard for the people that he represents. And he listens to people, he's a good problem solver, and when he runs up against something that is not what it should be, he'll try to move mountains to make it right. And so I've seen that side of Zach. Philosophically, he's very committed to the welfare of all the people in the community, and it's just been a real honor to be able to work with him. It's through him that I became engaged with the Liberal Party, I will say, because in my distant past, I've probably voted for every party at some point in my life.
Gotcha. So it was him as a person that really drew you into, I guess, the voting routine that you have now.
Absolutely.
So tell me, we spoke a little bit previous about how he also is the reason that I believe you said it was your brother is still alive today?
My brother, yeah. My brother was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer at a time when the cost of medication was unmanageable. When you're told that there's a way that your illness can be managed, but the cost is around $10,000 a month, you have to really think about, do I have an option here? And I saw it with another individual in our community who was diagnosed with leukemia, and her medication cost was going to be off the scale. So he began to look into how can we help these people. And at that time, any take-home cancer medication wasn't covered by our medical system, so people were dying because they couldn't afford it. He worked tirelessly until he found a way to get help for people like that, and now people that are facing those costs are having their medications covered. So.
Well, thank you so much, David. I think we're going to have to send it back to Heidi and Paul in the studio because I think we're going to be getting some results soon. But thank you so much, Heidi, Paul. Back to you.
Ella MacDonald, thank you so much at Liberal headquarters in Yarmouth. So important to hear those stories,
Yeah.
you know, the ones that maybe you don't hear on the campaign trail from insiders who know the leaders well. So I appreciate that very much.
Yeah, we talked so much about the party, but that was about the people involved in the politics too. So it was a nice touch there by David. Good story.
We should remind people of where things stood at dissolution. 34 seats for the Progressive Conservative Party. The Liberals had 14 seats. The NDP 6 seats at dissolution, and we're going to go to NDP headquarters right now where they are hoping for more once we start getting results in. That's where we find Skye Bryden-Blom this evening in Halifax. Skye.
Heidi, as you just mentioned, the results aren't even in yet, but I've already heard a few rounds of applause from the room around me. And joining me right now, I have Lucas Wyde, who is an NDP campaign advisor. So thank you so much for joining me. Tell me a bit about what you've experienced with the NDP so far.
Well, through this election. Yeah, so this was a really important one for the NDP. We had a new leader, Claudia Chender. This is her first general election as a leader. She's been an MLA for 2 previous elections. But we really wanted Nova Scotians to get to know Claudia, to meet her. And the more that they got to see her and hear her message, the more that they liked her.
And what are the qualities that you think Claudia has that have been resonating with voters?
Well, most importantly, she's very thoughtful, she's a very warm person, and she genuinely cares about people. And that's the biggest thing that I think came through during the campaign, is that she listens to people and that she has a genuine interest in helping them.
I think those are important points. And when it comes to even tonight, what are your hopes? What do you want to see?
Well, what we'd love to see is more New Democrats elected to the legislature. I mean, that's the goal of any campaign, is to grow and to represent people's needs and what they want in the legislature.
And early polling, it really suggested or indicated that perhaps there could be a tight race even for official opposition between the NDP and Liberals. What would it mean for the NDP to make gains like that?
Well, it would be very good for the NDP, but it would also mean that there's more people fighting for what people need, affordable housing, access to primary care, more money in their budget. And that's really what the NDP stands for, and that's what Claudia Chender as leader has brought to the table. And we're hoping to see more New Democrats in the legislature this year.
And throughout the campaign, what work has been underway to kind of meet those needs and make those promises?
Well, there's certainly a lot of work, and Claudia, ever since she became leader in 2022, has been out listening to people, talking to people right across the province as to what matters to them. And what we hear consistently is they need a house that they can afford, they need more access to primary care, and they need more money in their pockets to make their budgets work.
And for you, I know you said you've been with the NDP since around 2013 or so. So how are you feeling tonight?
I'm really optimistic that we're going to have a good night tonight. This was Claudia's first campaign. She was out there, she was working very hard. She traveled the province from one end to the other, meeting people where they live and hearing their concerns.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you. Heading back to the desk now as we wait for those results to start coming in.
All right, thank you, Sky. Sky Bryden-Blom at NDP headquarters in downtown Halifax for us this evening as we wait for those results to come in. And we've been saying the countdown to 9 o'clock is on. Got to preface that. Could be 9:05, could be 9:10. You got to stick around, I guess, to find out.
Exactly. Because, of course, voting stops at 9 in Mushaboom.
Yes.
So, perhaps it's a bit too much to expect results right at 9.
Yes.
But, of course, we are tapped into the Elections Nova Scotia system. So when they start releasing results, that's when we start releasing results to you.
All right. Zeros for now, but zeros not for long. We'll get the break. You're watching global news coverage of Decision Nova Scotia, the Nova Scotia provincial election on Global News. Right back after this. Stay with us.
You are watching Decision Nova Scotia 2024 here on Global News. Thank you for joining us. I'm Heidi Petrajic here with Prawl Brothers for the duration for you as we await results from Elections Nova Scotia in this race.
Yeah, moving into hour number 2 right now, and we are awaiting those results. We were saying it could be right at 9 o'clock. Now we're hearing it could be 9:05, could be 9:10. But as soon as you see them right along the bottom of our screen, we can all react and kind of pick it apart for sure.
This is the Power Hour.
Yeah, exactly. I like it.
All right, well, let's bring in our compatriots on this journey together, David Akin and Laurie Turnbull, who are breaking down results. And, this has really come down to party leaders for a very large part of the campaign.
Yeah, it always does. I mean, party leaders, you vote on the party leader, even though everybody says the local candidate. I've read some papers, you may have too. Local candidate affects the result versus 5% at best. It's really all about party leaders. Let's take a quick look around as we wait for these results. Pictou East, that's where Tim Houston's running. Stephanie Quinn is the Liberal. She manages her husband's construction business. Vernon Theriault, a union worker. Anything really on the line for Houston here? I mean, he's got to come out with a bigger majority, you think, or people will grumble, but I think he's in a pretty good position within the party.
Oh, I think that's right. I think there's no question that the party is behind Houston. I think that he is delivered as someone who has, as a conservative, even though he identifies progressive conservative, he stays away from the federal conservative brand. he has done this really staying away from a lot of the wedge politics that some other progressive conservative leaders have embraced.
Now, just Lori, we're going to chat a bit more. We've got some results on the map. I'm going to run through them right now. Right now, we have our first results of the night. Progressive Conservatives leading or elected in 5 seats. Liberals leading or elected in 1, and 1 New Democrat. This is the map as we start to see where these results are. Blue, of course, is PC. We have one little bit of orange up there in Cape Breton Centre, Whitney Pier, the incumbent Kendra Coombs. Look at all the votes in. This is the first result. Normally it's like 2 votes, 10 votes. 718 votes in already for Kendra Coombs. She's leading by 104 votes over the Progressive Conservative. That is up in Cape Breton, Whitney Pier. We have a minister, Brian Comer, mental health and addictions. He's got 60% of the vote, 230 votes cast for Brian Comer. Joe Ward at 26% and the NDP in third. Things unfolding as we kind of expected to at this point. Let's get into HRM, where we've got a little bit of action going on here. And this is a riding that the PCs were kind of hoping they might gun for if everything goes well. But right now, Braden Clark, he's the incumbent. There's only 3 polls reporting here. He's got a 23 vote lead over Damian Stoyloff, the challenger for the PCs. Elsewhere, what have we going on? Right there, we have the leaders riding. There's Claudia Chender right there, Dartmouth South. She's got a 72% of the vote in. Still early, 6 polls reporting at this point in time. Now we're starting to see some more. We're going to talk about floor crossers in more detail later, but here's a riding with a floor crosser. Brendan McGuire, he got elected into Halifax Atlantic 4 years ago as a Liberal. And in fact, when he got elected, he won by the biggest margin of victory of any Liberal in 2021. Then he crossed the floor, joined Tim Houston's cabinet as a Minister of Community Services, and he is leading right now, 132 votes over Dr. Kathy Chervin. The Liberal is in third place. So this riding, Halifax Atlantic, long history of electing Liberals. Is it a Brendan McGuire riding or a Liberal riding? Maybe it is a Brendan McGuire riding. So lots to talk about here early so far, but as we're looking at the ticker below, I think you can see the trend here. It's looking like Tim Houston is going to continue to be the premier. The PCs will hold that government. Right now, New Democrats are
There's
in
majority
the position
right there,
to be
David. 29,
there you
30.
go, 30. And your
Fascinating
New
to watch
Democrats are your
that
official
blue
opposition.
just tick up, tick, tick, tick.
Yeah,
now
your
it's at
map is
30
changing
already.
as we speak
38.
there.
The Liberals, not even with 2 seats yet.
And the NDP,
and
we should note, at 8.
Yeah, and we don't have any results just yet for Zach Churchill's riding down in Yarmouth. Nothing in here yet. But I can tell you that the PCs, this candidate, they're running against him, Nick Hilton. He's a nurse at Yarmouth Regional. He's a municipal councillor. His resume is a good candidate. And the PCs are taking this riding seriously. They would like to win everything, including Zach Churchill's seat. Churchill's been there for
That was a tight race
what, 4
last time
elections?
for Zach, too. 2021 was a tight race.
So we'll see, but right now, very little red on the board. The only red I can see is that's it. In Bedford South is Braden Clark is your only Liberal on the board right now. I'm looking at some other places that were red. We don't have a lot of ridings still in yet. Timberley Prospect, Ian Rankin, the former Prime Premier, there's no results in there yet. And you know, I wanted to talk a bit about, we haven't any results yet in Hants East. For the Liberals to come back, they have to win ridings where they miss by that much. And John A. MacDonald, he's the first PC to win in Hants East since 1988 when he won 4 years ago, and he won by like 85 votes. So that's the kind of riding the Liberals, if they are going to show any comeback, Hants East, Hants West were Liberal ridings, and they were close. But right now, there's no red, enough orange that they're the opposition. They'd like to win some more than that. And PCs at 30, they're in majority territory, although they want to win more than that too.
Yeah, exactly. All right, sit tight, David. We are going to bring in another fascinating storyline that unfolds here in Nova Scotia. The past couple elections as well, you see that other one on the board, which is actually tied with the Liberal Party of Nova Scotia right now. But we can talk about Cumberland North, and let's take a look at how Elizabeth Smith McCrossan is doing. And she is ahead right now, 62.8% of the vote for Elizabeth Smith McCrossan. Of course, history made here in 2021 when she became the first independent ever elected to the legislature.
Taking a look at Annapolis now, and David Bowlby is leading there, 53.3% of the vote with a lead of 195 over the incumbent Liberal, Carmen Kerr.
Yeah, we're going to take a look at some PC gains over incumbent Liberal ridings here. Clayton Park West, this was the riding of Rafa Di Costanzo, who was the Liberal incumbent but stepped aside for health reasons. And right now, that is...
Ade Ekoke Faraday is leading there. And in Cole Harbour, Leah Martin, pardon me, is leading in that riding, 39.3% of the vote there.
Cole Harbour, Dartmouth, Brad McGowan right now is in the lead. 930 votes, of course, early days here, but 46.9% of the vote there.
That was Laura Lee Nichols riding, and she did not run again. Hammonds Plains, Lucasville,
Wow.
Rick Burns, the Conservative Party candidate there, 51.9% of the vote, leading by over 200 votes to the incumbent Ben Jessup,
Who's been
the
there for
Liberal
quite a
candidate
while,
there.
quite a while. The Liberals are ticking up on the seat count at the bottom, though. They're at 3 now, but the PCs are actually higher than they were at dissolution. We said 34 seats, right?
That's right.
They're at 35 right now. So let's get some instant analysis, David and Laurie, of what you see unfolding here.
Yeah, so let's take a look at HRM. There's already a lot of change happening elsewhere. You mentioned Annapolis. Laurie and I both kind of went, wow, that's Stephen McNeil's old riding, and it could be going Tory blue. And here we've got HRM right now. This is the electoral map right now for Halifax Regional Municipality. This is what it looked like in 2021. That's 2021. A lot of red, isn't there? This is 2024, not so much. So where are things happening right now? Fairview Clayton Park, longtime Liberal former cabinet minister Patricia Arab in 3rd place here, and the NDP has a slim lead on the Progressive Conservatives. Would you expect the PCs to do well in Fairview Clayton Park? I would think if anybody wins, it's going to be, if not Patricia Arab, it's going to be the New Democrats in that part of Halifax.
Yeah, I mean, to be perfectly honest, I'm not totally surprised to see Patricia Arab not leading at this point, because she was, it was pretty close, the margin that she won by the last time. Right. And so I think this was a riding that was clearly in contention. I think it's pretty clear the NDP were gunning pretty hard for this riding. And so, you know, it's still early, obviously, but I think at this point, when you're looking at how the NDP is going to build some more seats, are they going to move into that position of official opposition over the Liberals? It's going to be by taking up some of these spaces in Metro that were close for them.
That's right. And Fairview Clayton Park used to be, in some configuration, Halifax Fairview. That's Alexa McDonough's old riding, Graham Steele's old riding, staunch New Democrat. So that's Fairview Clayton Park. Halifax Chebucto, Halifax Needham, that would be a hold. NDP ahead in Halifax Needham. Susie Hansen, very popular New Democrat. She is well up on the Liberals in Halifax Needham. We have no results yet for Halifax Citadel Sable Island, but we also have a Halifax Armdale. This has already gone back and forth once. I'm just going to go this way. The New Democrats open up. That's Rod Wilson, open up a lead in Halifax Armdale, and that's just been overtaken by the PCs. Halifax Armdale, the NDP, I think, wanted Armdale, but I know that they're on a tier 2 sort of list. PCs ahead in Armdale, that's the kind of progress that Tim Houston wanted, to get right into Halifax.
Exactly, and I think that's entirely why Tim Houston called this election. What he was going for is that for him to increase his majority, which was already pretty sizable, it would have to be by getting into the HRM and getting some of those metro ridings. And so I think that's why we saw him make some of these promises, like taking down the bridge tolls, for example. That's not to make people happier on the east, the east or west coast of the province. That is to get directly into the minds of those HRM voters who pay that bridge toll every day.
Right, and we take a look at the bottom, the score right now. PCs leading or elected in 36. You only need 28. I say only need 28. It's a 55-seat legislature. 36 leading or elected. So he has improved his margin if this is what holds. Liberals obviously having a terrible night, leading or elected in 3. One more last little one before I throw it back to you guys. I want to point out Cole Harbour, Alex Stratford. There's no incumbent, I believe, in Cole Harbour. That's right. Alex Stratford for the New Democrats leading in Cole Harbour. They do have some strength on that side. Dartmouth, Preston, Cole. We've seen New Democrats do well there. And so again, Sackville, Cobequid. There's another one where we have no incumbent, and we have Paul Wozni with a slim 23-vote lead over Paul Russell, HRM councillor, running for the PCs. So there's the NDP, if you ask me, they're showing some strength where they wanted to show some strength. Yep. Still a little threadbare, but the Liberal support just looks like it's falling right now in HRM.
Absolutely, and that Cole Harbour riding is one where Tony Ince had been a minister for the Liberals. He decided not to reoffer. And so a couple of things happening, right? Like this, the opening up of ridings in 11 ridings that there was no incumbent. That is a serious factor in explaining what's going on here, because incumbency is a strong factor in Atlantic Canada. That's not unusual. And so when you see these seats open up, it just really kind of gives a sense of unpredictability to what might happen. And I think absolutely the NDP are moving into these seats where they really needed to move past the Liberals if they wanted to make make some gains tonight. And I think this might bring us back to a question later on in the night. Did that strategy they used by focusing on some ridings and not all of them, did that pan out for them?
I just got a little bit ahead of myself because I'm thinking always, I'm just, we got also results. We have one other, as you'll see on the bottom, and I just wanted to double check. You may have seen me touch on that. And that is way up there in Cumberland North, where the other is Elizabeth Smith McCrossan. She was elected as a PC last time. She left caucus over COVID rules, public policy, and health. Very popular riding, and she's coming up as an independent. So Paul, Heidi, that's the one other that you see on the bottom, Elizabeth Smith McCrossan, way up there in the north part of the province. Back to you guys.
Well, thank you very much, David and Lori. And we told you the results would come in quickly. 37 for the PCs right now, NDP at 7, Liberals at 3, and other that Elizabeth Smith McCrossan win there as the 1. Let's talk about gains and losses. You can see right now how much the PC party has gained. 7 seats right there, 2 for the NDP, and a loss of 9 for the Liberal Party of Nova Scotia, which is staggering at this point. The popular vote, these are important numbers, 57.3% for the PC party, which is more than they achieved in 2021. And for the Liberals, 22%, and the New Democratic Party, 19%. They're very close, so it shows that maybe there's some vote splitting happening there, but definitely a gain for the PC party.
I'm going to stop you right there, Heidi, because we have some breaking news to bring you now. Global News is ready to make the call. And there you have it. Tim Houston will indeed remain as Premier of Nova Scotia. He and the PCs have won the second mandate he was looking for.
So let's go now to Megan King at PC headquarters, where I can't imagine what the feeling is right now, but she knows. Megan.
Oh my goodness, Heidi, I don't even know if you can hear me right now because people are celebrating here. They weren't expecting it to come in this quickly, but it has. And there's cheering, handshaking. People could not be more excited. Their faces are glued to the screen. All around the room, there are TVs showing our show and these results. And everyone is blown away by this level of success. All of these supporters, volunteers, and the candidates themselves worked for the last 30 days to make this happen, and they got exactly what they wanted. From the beginning, it was all about making this majority even stronger, and we're seeing just the beginning of that. I mean, being able to say that it's going to be a majority Houston government this early in the way. You can hear the people celebrating behind me. It's going to be a very fun night here. They're putting the party in PC party over here, as you can hear. I was just chatting with Danny McGilvery, who is one of the candidates, and he was surprised even to see how quickly things were coming. It was amazing. Danny actually behind me now being told to go hug his wife. It's just an exciting time for all, and I'm sure it will only continue from here. For now, though, I'll send it back to you in studio.
All right, Megan King, thank you very much there in Pictou. Of course, Tim Houston, PC party headquarters. Let's talk about what just happened and what could happen from here on in.
As it looks right now, 38-7-2 for the Liberals, which I believe, David and Laurie, is what they need to remain as an official party in Nova Scotia. You guys could provide more context there, but what are your thoughts on what we've seen in the last 5 minutes?
Yeah, so, I mean, the Progressive Conservatives, what did they set out to do? Win a majority, obviously, and win a bigger majority. And they are certainly won their majority, and they're on the track. The Liberal Party, unprepared, just in a rough spot right now. Let's just pop in on Zach Churchill's own riding. He is behind right now. Nick Hilton, the Progressive Conservatives, leading Zach Churchill in Churchill's riding of Yarmouth. He's got 52% to 44% for Churchill. We have more than half the polls in. Churchill in a fight to hold his seat. The only other, so let's take a look then at the 2 ridings that are Liberal right now, and that is the riding of Timberlea Prospect, where the former Premier, former leader, Ian Rankin, is at 48%, Trish McDonald, 36%. The PCs, they thought it would be, everything would be rolling right if they're going to take Timberlea Prospect. And right now, Ian Rankin, with 6 polls reporting, is on Timberlea Prospect. And the only other Liberal is way up there in Cape Breton. Sydney member 2, Derek Momberquette, has a 28-vote lead over Brian MacArthur, the Progressive Conservative. Derek Momberquette, Brian MacArthur, right now up in Sydney member 2, a 28-vote lead over Brian MacArthur. So in Sydney member 2, Derek Momberquette holding on by the skin of his teeth. Zach Churchill is behind by a significant amount, and Ian Rankin. So for the Liberals, just could not be at this point. I guess it could be worse. They could be down to 1 and losing party status. But if their leader loses and they're down to 2 seats, that's going to be a major rethink. And meanwhile, the NDP they're going to be the official opposition, but not with a whole lot of extra seats at this point.
Yeah.
Okay, back to you guys.
All right, you mentioned Sydney member 2, too, Derek Mombercat. If he loses his seat, it'll be the first time since 1970 that an incumbent was defeated there. So we'll see what happens there with Sydney member 2 as the results are rolling in now, so we can go ahead and elect some folks as well. So let's start in Queens. And that is Kim Maslin, who we can say elected in Queens with 80% of the vote, Heidi.
Minister of Public Works there, keeping her seat. Let's move to Guysborough-Tracadie. David talked about this earlier, and George Grant, the candidate there for the Liberals. Well, Greg Morrow is declared elected there with a handy win at 81%. And also at Argyle, Colton LeBlanc has also kept his seat, Minister of Service Nova Scotia, and he won by a large margin last time as well. He's at 83.4% of the vote.
As we continue to look at that seat count below us, 36 for the PCs, majority government now. NDP have made some gains in official opposition
Maybe
position
not
right
as much
now.
as they wanted, though. They had 6 seats going into this. They're at 9. I mean, they must be thinking perhaps they wanted more out of this after all that campaigning, but that's where it stands
Well,
right
I think
now.
Claudia Chender would take being the opposition for sure, and that's how it stands right now. Let's go to Skye Broaden-Blom, who's at NDP headquarters in downtown Halifax. What's the reaction there so far, Skye, as these results just came pouring in?
Yes, Paul, I don't know if you can hear, but there's certainly a lot of applause and cheers happening in this room right now. I do believe that the NDP are feeling quite confident seeing those results come in, especially when it comes to the official opposition in the race for that. So currently joining me is Party President Carol Ferguson. So Carol, how are you feeling?
Well, I'm feeling very excited and very proud of the campaign that Claudia Chender has led our party through for this election. Yeah.
And there must have been a really good update because I just heard so many applause right there.
People seem to be cheering. I haven't had a chance to look, and I know the results are still coming in and they're still, subject to change. But like I say, we're very proud of the campaign that Claudia led our caucus and members and candidates through.
And right now, I know, as we said, those results are still coming in.
Yes.
But is this kind of what you expected, or even as you watch those numbers?
Well, we had some fabulous candidates all over the province, and I want to thank them for stepping up and standing for public office. So we had our fabulous candidates, and I think our caucus under Claudia really put forward some clear and workable solutions to the problems that are facing Nova Scotians about getting a doctor into our communities, getting the cost of living somehow under control, because people are struggling to meet their bills, whether they live in HRM or whether they live in the areas outside. Like I live in Tatamagouche. Gas costs the same, if not more, there than it does in the city. The electricity bills are the same. People are struggling, and most importantly, housing. We're still, it's problematic. The housing. We have homeless camps. None of us want to see that. Seniors in our community are afraid of not being able to manage their homes anymore, but where do they go? They can't downsize. It's not possible. So there's lots of things that we wanted to talk to Nova Scotians about and offer solutions for, and I think that some of that has resonated.
And especially, in terms of the official opposition, what would that mean for the NDP, especially when it comes to those issues?
Well, we'll wait and see. I'm not going to... I'll wait and see what the voters decide today. And no matter whether we are the official opposition or not, every New Democrat that is elected today will be back at their jobs tomorrow or starting a new job tomorrow, working on the issues that are facing Nova Scotians. So in that sense, it doesn't make any difference in terms of our focus of trying to work and find solutions for the problems that Nova Scotian families are facing.
Thank you so much for your time. I'm throwing it back to you at the desk, and I'll continue to hear the applause erupt behind me. Thank you.
Sky Braden-Blom at NDP headquarters in Halifax. Thank you very much. Yes, the NDP now poised to be the official opposition as things are looking at this moment. Let's take a look at some PC holds, though. Some ridings where they have kept their seat. Of course, Colton LeBlanc in Argyle, as I mentioned earlier, he has kept his seat. Chester St. Margaret's Danielle Barkhouse has also held on as the incumbent there with 62% of the vote.
Yeah,
and Guysborough Tracadie.
Greg Morrow, 80.1% of the vote, Heidi, and this is considered another one of those bellwether ridings. And as mentioned, David gave us some context on the Liberal candidate there who was running, George Grant and Greg Morrow, cruising to that one tonight.
Pictou West, Marco McLeod has been declared elected with 73.7%
Yeah, this is
of
Carla
the vote.
McFarland's old riding. She, of course, retiring, and that was a by-election that Marco McLeod won, so he got in quite easily as well.
Exactly. In Queens, Kim Masling has kept her seat, of course, Minister of Public Works, 79.5% of the vote there, declared elected.
All right, let's see where we go next. Colchester, Musquodoboit Valley, Scott Armstrong with the win here. Former Conservative MP, I do believe, Scott Armstrong for the PCs, consider him elected at 68.1% of the vote.
And in Pictou Centre, Danny McGilvery has won the seat. Of course, we saw earlier Pat Dunn not running in that seat, but Danny McGilvery has kept it for the PC party of Nova Scotia.
Yeah, we saw it live on television, Danny hugging his family right behind Megan King.
Right, that's right.
Yeah, Trevor Boudreau, we can go ahead and say elected too, 70% of the vote in Richmond.
And things have really progressed here as we see a PC majority has been called by Global News thanks to quick results from Elections Nova Scotia after that little delay there at 9 o'clock. But let's get David Akin and Laurie Turnbull once again to chime in here and talk about, what's facing the NDP as opposition now.
Yeah, so as we look at the map right now, we still don't have results from several ridings. So those of you who are really good at math, I don't know if you're that good at math, Laurie, if you add it up, you don't have 55 seats here. So I just want to focus in on the HRM, talk about where the NDP have picked up some things, but where we're also missing things. We have gray right now in Sackville, Uniacke, so we don't have any results here. That's where Gord Johns is the incumbent. Johns was once in cabinet and had to leave cabinet for saying some dumb things that happen sometimes to politicians. But the NDP, it's just, again, in the HRM, Laurie, it's the collapse of the Liberals. They're just losing. They've lost both Cole Harbors. They won Preston in 2021. That was Angela Simmons, but it's Twyla Gross. So there's just no good news in the HRM, but good news for both the PCs and the New Democrats in HRM right now.
That's it. It seems like the Liberals' vote has collapsed, and we don't know yet whether the Liberal voters decided to stay home or the Liberal voters decided to reallocate to other parties. But it looks like both the PCs and the NDP are benefiting from this collapse in the Liberals, and so that's clearly the case inside the HRM. And I think one of the realities for Houston prior to this is that he managed to elect all kinds of people, but in the more rural parts of the province, around the province, not in that heart of HRM. And I think, again, that was one of the big things he wanted to accomplish in the election, and we can see that.
So if we're looking at the tile at the bottom, let's do some speculation based on some things we know from the campaigns. Sackville, Uniacke, it is an incumbent PC, and if Gord Johns wins, that's 37 for the PCs. But we've also heard Lisa Blackburn, a councillor up there. The NDP feel they might take that, but that's not going to be a Liberal seat up there. Then we go to Bedford Basin. This is Kelly Regan's old seat, and here Tim Outhit, popular councillor, is running. Doris Robbins used to work for Kelly Regan. I think the PCs believe that one's going to go in their column tonight. We don't have any results for Citadel Island downtown. Lisa LaChance is the incumbent there and likely to win, so we'd put that in the NDP column. And so as I look at these numbers, I think the NDP opposition could be a strong one. It'll be a different opposition leader, it looks like, Claudia Chender versus Tim Houston. What do you make of that mix? That should be a little more interesting legislature, you think?
Well, I mean, I think one of the issues that has really, one of the factors that has benefited Tim Houston and the Progressive Conservatives a lot is this vote splitting between the Liberals and the NDP, where you had two opposition leaders who were experienced in the House. They know their files, their parties are behind them, but they were splitting that vote all the time. So the opposition is arguably strong, but divided. Now, if we have a more clear official opposition, that's more momentum on the opposition side. Claudia Chender is positioning herself as the government in waiting, which is much harder to do when you see those opposition benches divided. I think there was a lot of pressure, a lot of expectation on Claudia Chender to perform in this manner on election night. The party went all in on her when Gary Burrell stepped away, and she is, I think, she's meeting that.
Yeah, and I think the NDP, Paul and Heidi, they're really looking at this election and the next one. This election as the springboard of the next one. Someone is going to have to challenge Tim Houston for government in 4 years, and the NDP wants to set the table that they're the government in waiting. And obviously the Liberals, people have come from third to first before, but they've got to rebuild that. It's probably going to be a couple elections at least. So that's what the election map of the province looks like right now. Lots of blue in places that haven't been blue for a while, like the riding of Annapolis. David Bowlby leading the incumbent Liberal. That's Stephen McNeil's old riding. So a lot of blue from Yarmouth all the way up to North Sydney right now. Let's just before I go, yes, North Sydney just reminded me about Northside Westmount, which is where another floor crosser. Remember, Fred Tilley, a week before the election said, you know what, maybe I'm a conservative after all, and it looks like he might get reelected. He's up on Danny Laffin by 982 votes. That's a pretty good lead, more than half of the polls in. So Fred Tilley making a decision that may save his job a week before the election was called. That's kind of interesting up there in Northside Westmount.
Yeah, we're waiting for Clare to come in too, I do believe, down there in southwestern Nova Scotia as well.
And Clare's almost, that would be possibly Liberal. Maybe they
Liberal
one
now,
there.
but there's some kind of rumblings about how they've handled the fisheries. And 2024 is still not in yet. From my computer, it doesn't say
that's 2021. Just to look at it again, 2021.
Yeah, Ronnie
and you can
LeBlanc,
see
right?
1, 2, 3, 4 on the Fundy Shore for the Liberals, but nothing yet on the Fundy Shore, including Zach Churchill still losing in his riding.
Yes. Okay, exactly. So the seat count right now, we've already said, of course, PC majority. The NDP look to be in the opposition, 36-9-3, and we know Elizabeth Smith McCrossan is the independent.
I'm really looking for some of those crucial results that aren't in yet.
Yeah, exactly.
Really waiting for
especially
those
when we've talked about this little narrative the past couple of days of this supermajority for the PC government too. So we haven't really talked about that this evening yet as well. Haven't heard any speeches or anything like that. So still lots to come, but we will catch our breaths after that influx of results. You're watching Decision Nova Scotia here on Global News, our coverage of the Nova Scotia provincial election. Don't go anywhere. Right back after this with more.
This is Global News, Decision Nova Scotia 2024. You are here with myself, Heidi Petracek, and Paul Brothers.
Good evening.
In for the duration on this election, and we've had results come in quickly. And now we're waiting for some key results to really finalize more of the numbers that we've seen out of the 55 seats. But right now, the PCs have 37, seats, and Global News has declared a majority PC government. But there are still numbers to be worked out here. NDP at 10.
Yeah, they ticked
Liberals
up to 10 since the commercial break.
Right now, and the other there at 1, that's Elizabeth Smith McCrossan, the independent in Cumberland North. So a lot still to work out, and of course, leader speeches as well.
Yeah,
we're expecting those.
Sounding like Premier Tim Houston may be speaking around 10 p.m., so stay tuned for that. We'll see what he says. Because 37 right now, Heidi, I think they may have expected more, given the confident nature of the Premier going into this snap election call. We'll check in with David in just a few minutes to get his thoughts on that side of things, too.
Yeah, it's not John Buchanan territory yet, if you remember 1985.
Supermajority.
That's right, or supermajority, and we will break that down with Laurie and David in a moment. Let's look at tied ridings right now. These are ones that still need to be worked out. Bedford South, Damian Stoylov, tied essentially with Braden Clark, so it's a very tight one. They're a lead of only 24 seats for him.
We talked about how the Premier was in that riding, too.
To start off the campaign.
Paying off for a defeat of the incumbent there. Cole Harbour, we have Alex Stratford at 42.4% of the vote, followed by the PC's Leah Martin at 36.2%. That was Tony Ince's riding, Cole Harbour,
right.
longtime Liberal incumbent, not re-offering in this election.
In Lunenburg, if you remember the Tim Hortons gift card controversy, well, it didn't hurt Susan Corkum-Greek, who was declared elected for the PC party at 64% of the vote there.
Yeah, Nick Jennery, former executive director of Feed Nova Scotia with the NDP there, thought he might have had a more impressive showing there, but Susan Corkum-Greek elected in Lunenburg.
All right, well, there's lots to talk about, and we haven't touched a lot on Cape Breton yet, which, in some parts of Cape Breton is an NDP stronghold. For others, blue as blue can be. So let's check in with David Aiken and see how things are shaping up there on the island.
Yeah, and Paul, just before I do, you mentioned that, maybe the PCs were wanting something more. They may yet get it. They're at 38 now. That's still an improvement. And don't forget, we don't have any results yet for Glace Bay Dominion. Speaking of Cape Breton, John White is the incumbent there. So if you put that into the PC column, we don't have any results yet, but let's assume the incumbent holds. John White, that puts the PCs to 39. So that's Glace Bay Dominion, nothing in there yet. We talked about Northside Westmount, where Fred Tilley is holding it for the PCs, even though he won as a Liberal last time around. Cape Breton East, that's a hold right now. Brian Comer, the Mental Health and Addictions Minister, that's a hold. In Cape Breton Centre, Whitney Pier, right now that's a hold for the NDP. That seems to be their only seat up in Cape Breton. But so that's Cape Breton. We don't have results there. We also don't have results if we go to HRM. Let me go back a bit. We don't have results, and this is odd, and we're trying to get some answers from Elections Nova Scotia for Bedford Basin. No incumbent, this is Kelly Reagan's, but Tim Outhit, a popular councillor. I think the PCs figure if there was going to be any pickup in HRM, it was going to be Bedford Basin. So we think about way up there, Glace Bay Dominion, that's 39, and if that turns blue, or at 40, Sackville Uniacke could be blue, could be orange. It's unlikely to be Liberal, but we don't have any results yet either. So before we say, was it all worth it for Tim Houston, it looks like he may have taken out the Liberal leader. That's nothing insignificant, and he certainly will have increased his seats. If he gets to that 40, I think that would be definitely where they would like to be, even high 30s, I think, in the is this all worth it? Ask Claudia Chender if it's all worth it. Absolutely it is. She's now the official opposition leader. But only one seat up there in Cape Breton for the New Democrats. The rest of their strength is in the HRM. The New Democrats, and we may hear Claudia Chender talk about this, that next step for them is they've got to find something in the Lunenburgs, for example, more in Cape Breton, if they want to ever become government.
And that is one of the storylines now, too. We know the PC majority, but NDP as the opposition for the next little while. So let's take a look at some NDP holds as we kind of get some of the results that are coming in. So let's talk about Dartmouth South. Don't have an elected checkmark on Claudia Chender just yet, but we expect that one to come through as elected, of course, NDP leader and perhaps the leader of the opposition party now, too high.
Indeed, Halifax Needham as well. The incumbent Susie Hansen is leading at 61.2% of the vote, but there is less than 200 votes difference there. Susan LeBlanc in Dartmouth North leading 64.8% of the vote there with a lead of more than 900 votes.
Susan, the incumbent. One thing about the NDP incumbents, they're very popular in their riding.
Quite strong.
Halifax Chibouque, though, we have Krista Gallagher with 49.6% of the vote right now, with a lead on the PCs and the Liberals there, Heidi.
Halifax Citadel Sable Island, Lisa Lachance, 49.5% of the vote right now over the PC candidate Eleanor Humphreys. But the lead, again, less than 200 votes. Kings North, John Lohr, of course, PC party and Minister of Housing. He is declared elected at 53.5% of the vote there, with the NDP in second.
Housing Minister, a seat close to the Premier there in the Cabinet for sure. Digby Annapolis, we can go ahead and say another Cabinet Minister, Jill Balzer, has been re-elected with 71.4% of the vote in Digby Annapolis.
But there's still lots to talk about, and let's zoom out a bit with David and Lori and talk about the bigger picture here. We've been delving into individual ridings and regions, but let's talk kind of what this means overall.
Yeah, big picture is change. Elections are always, for me, about change. May not be a change in government. We have a change in the opposition leader, it looks like, and that is going to change things. There's the electoral map from 2021. You can see a little bit of red, et cetera, et cetera. There's 2024. Let's go into Halifax. There's 2021, and now we look at 2024. Lori, give me your sense, sort of the big picture here. Halifax is sticking with the PCs, and as you mentioned, I think it's because the PCs, they're not necessarily going where, say, Pierre Poilievre is going. They're staying right there, sort of in that sweet spot in the political center, not too threatening to anybody, just right, not too old, not too cold, not too hot, not too cold. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we look back to 2021, when Tim Houston was making his real bid to be Premier, he was very careful to say that he felt closer ideologically to Justin Trudeau than he did to Erin O'Toole, who was the Conservative leader federally at the time. Right. And I mean, Erin O'Toole is not Pierre Poilievre. And so I think, now Houston is really taking care to distance himself from Poilievre. He obviously wanted to run against Trudeau in this election because he wanted to dump any kind of feeling that the province wasn't going the way it should, and that's something that is typically taken out on the incumbent. He's able to use Trudeau as the incumbent rather than have that energy being put back toward himself. But I think, also he has managed to get he's never embraced that kind of wedge politics that we've seen in some other people, Blaine Higgs included. And we saw Blaine Higgs go down to defeat not too long ago, and Houston has managed to keep this space around him as a more red Tory, as he's called himself. We'll see what happens to that space flash forward a year from now if Poilievre is Prime Minister.
You mentioned the wedge politics, and I agree with you, and that's kind of why I was a little surprised early in the campaign or the week before, we saw these missives from the PC about Zach Churchill, Justin Trudeau, carbon tax lover, Zach Churchill. Now, the carbon tax throughout Atlantic Canada is completely unpopular. In New Brunswick, we saw the Liberal Premier, she's proposing a cap and trade system, Zach Churchill suggesting he'd be open to that sort of thing. Houston doesn't like the carbon tax, nobody likes the carbon tax, we get it. But that seemed to be about the only wedge that he tried to use. But other than that, he talked about himself as a kid growing up in, I think, in Fairview Park. That's where he grew up as a kid. So he's been to the center. Claudia Chender, the New Democrats told me that if you meet her, you're going to like her, and their issue is to get her out and bring up her visibility in the province.
Yeah, and we saw, especially in the middle of the campaign, some polls that indicated that her name recognition was the lowest of the leaders, which in some ways wasn't a surprise given the fact that she was the third place leader. And so I think that would have given the parties the information they need. And that would have given her party the information it needs, and it would have had some internal polling also to let them know we need to get her out there. We need, their campaign would have relied a lot on the visibility of the leader, given the fact that she's positive, she's a good communicator, she's got this going on for herself. They need to kind of put that out there and make sure she's noticed.
And
I thought too, Lori, that she. I was going to say, I thought she performed pretty well in the debates too, like really getting under the Premier's skin, and that may set up some pretty good question periods and things. Yeah, exactly.
So we'll see the dynamic between the two of them is going to be very interesting.
Yeah, totally.
And we might be writing Zach Churchill's obit tonight. He is still losing down there.
Well, I'm just checking down there. Yeah, it's just a few hundred votes right now to Nick Hilton of the PCs, right, David?
And even if I think he won his seat, let's say they win 3. It'd be pretty difficult for him to stand up and say, don't worry, folks, I'll lead us into the next one. Whether or not he wins a seat tonight, that could be the end of him. He's a leader, certainly. But right now, he's not winning a seat.
Like a sports team, though, I guess you kind of bottom out and then you rebuild, I guess. Is that
But we should mention that 2 is the magic number to remain a registered political party in Nova Scotia. So they have to hang on to those 2. Which is something that is a little nail-biting right now, considering there are some ridings that we haven't
The Main
seen
Street
a lot of
poll
results.
that came out last week that kind of said there was going to be a bit of a beatdown for the Liberals is holding true right now for sure, as they sit at 2 seats on the seat count right there. So something to watch for the next little while.
They were talking about Claudia Chender's performance there, leader of the Nova Scotia NDP, who's had lots of rehearsal now for being leader of the official opposition. Well, she's declared elected in Dartmouth South now, ahead of Bella McGregor, the PC candidate. So that seat's secured for her.
There. Feeling pretty good at NDP headquarters tonight with that news. In Shelburne, we can go ahead and elect Nolan Young for the PC, 79.2% of the vote. All 3 parties have held this seat in the past, but he's the incumbent, fared very well during the Barrington Lake wildfires, very outspoken and supportive of that, of course. And Victoria of the Lakes, we can say that Diane Timmins has been elected. This was held by former Speaker PC Keith Bain. And tonight that holds for a PC. A little side story on some ruffled feathers between Keith Bain and Premier Houston as well, but that might be for another show. But we can go ahead and elect Diane Timmins there in Victoria of the Lakes.
I think lots to talk about still. Of course, PC party headquarters is where Megan King is right now in Pictou, and she has Peter MacKay with her right now to talk about what's happened tonight. And I know we're expecting Tim Houston later to take to the podium. Megan.
Yeah, absolutely, Heidi. That's exactly what's coming down the pipeline. But first, I am joined with Peter MacKay. Thank you for joining us today. And I'd like to hear, not a lot of pressure on you, but why are you out today?
Well, thanks very much, Megan. I mean, Tim Houston is a good friend of mine. We go back a while. He's my neighbor. I'm a longtime Conservative, of course. So I want to be here tonight to support and celebrate with him. This is a historic night for the Progressive Conservative Party of Nova Scotia. First time, I think, since the 80s, you've seen back-to-back majority governments and an increased majority. So that's a tribute to the work that Tim Houston and his party have done over the last 3.5 years. They worked hard, not only in the campaign, but they've been working hard to deliver for Nova Scotians for 3.5 years, and that was rewarded tonight by these results.
Absolutely, and we have called the majority government going into the second term. What do you think we'll see change? I know there was different focuses that came along with this election as well.
Well, the Houston government has been very focused, as you know, on health care, but other issues, of course, that inevitably come along, the isthmus, of course, between New Brunswick and the province, housing, immigration, issues related to climate change and the erosion of our shoreline. And I think one of the main goals that this election now allows the government to achieve is confidence and a strengthened hand to deal directly with Ottawa on some of those important issues and others.
That was one of the focuses brought into this is the Trudeau government, the federal government, and trying to come in strong when making negotiations. Do you really think that was one of the main things behind why they called this election?
I honestly do. I heard several occasions where ministers of the Nova Scotia government went to Ottawa and they weren't treated seriously, and in fact they were almost mocked as if, well, we know you're just doing this for electioneering. So, you know, I think the Premier took that as a call to action. We're seeing, of course, now, I believe, a repudiation of a lot of the policies of the federal government, including the carbon tax. That was a live issue on the doorsteps. Affordability generally. And just a sense that the policies and the direction of the federal government have been wrong. And I think Nova Scotians really were feeling they wanted to send a message to Ottawa through this provincial election.
Well, and clearly those voices have been heard with how people voted tonight. Thank you very much, Peter, and I'm glad you could get here after your kids' hockey game. That was just in the same building. Thank you very much for your time.
Cheers.
I'll send it back to you now, Heidi and Paul, but very clear here that they think that this election was necessary and something that is now going to be a benefit for Nova Scotians. Back to you,
thanks for that. Megan King with Peter MacKay at PC headquarters, a well-known name, of course, in politics.
Former Conservative MP,
Yeah.
former Minister of National Defence and Attorney General.
Yeah, exactly. I'd like to get his take on Premier Houston kind of distancing himself, though, from Pierre Poilievre during the campaign, as not even saying his name, but that's for another time as well down the road for sure.
Speaking of Tim Houston.
Yeah, let's go to Pictou East, where Tim Houston has been elected. No real surprise here, Heidi.
No, exactly.
Make it official.
Held on to that seat, and again, we're expecting him to speak shortly, so stick around for that.
I actually been looking forward to this one because this is my riding in Bedford Basin, and we've been waiting on these results delayed, but we haven't said anyone's elected yet. But Tim Outhit, longtime HRM councillor, is in the lead, 64.6% of that vote. So not really surprised there in that riding based on some of the signs.
And we've talked a lot about this race, Northside Westmount. Fred Tilley has been declared elected, the PC party candidate. Of course, once a Liberal, crossed the floor just before the election. Danny Laffin once ran for the PC
That's
party.
That's right, 2019.
And then now a Liberal. Unfortunately, it did not pay off for him there in Northside Westmount.
Yeah, good night for the floor crossers.
It is, apparently. Let's check in with Skye Bryden-Blom, who's hanging out at NDP headquarters in Halifax, getting a feel for how folks are feeling there. Skye.
Yes, the energy here has been explosive with applause, especially when we heard that Claudia Chender, had been, I guess, elected or leading in her district of Dartmouth South. I'm currently joined by David Hare, who has been conducting polling for the NDP and research. So how are you feeling? I see you can't keep your eyes off the numbers.
I know. Every time I'm trying to look back to see what's changed, and we got another announcement that shows us leading in Cole Harbour, which we knew was going to be a tough two-way battle when we entered this campaign. It was really looking like it would be a three-way fight, but now with the Liberal collapse in the HRM, it's really developed into a two-way battle.
And I was speaking with you earlier, it was only hours ago, but things have really changed since the polls started to, those votes started to come in. So for you, any surprises happening at this moment?
I mean, again, like I said, we knew going into Election Day and even during the advanced voting that the Liberal vote was collapsing, and just seeing how it's playing out on the ground with whether people are still coming out to vote or where their vote is going is absolutely what we're watching right now. And as you're seeing that in Sackville-Cobequid, we have a narrow lead there with a great candidate in Paul Wozni. We also, as I mentioned, the narrow lead that we currently have in Cole Harbour, 2 seats where it's actually a Tory NDP fight, and also leading in ridings like Fairview-Clayton Park and Halifax-Armdale, which are exciting for us.
And opposition territory, how are you feeling about that?
We're feeling good. I mean, we're seeing growth right across a lot of different districts, so we're feeling good about that. And we knew that one of the objectives getting into this campaign was just to introduce Claudia to as many Nova Scotians as possible, because what we found both in our research and just from sending her out across the province is the more people she gets to meet and get to hear that she's focused on the issues that matter to them, which are healthcare, housing, and affordability, the more they like her and have a favorable opinion.
And how do you think that, the NDP's promises and Claudia Chender, this being her first time leading the party for an election, how do you think that has really engaged with the voters?
Well, I think because she's really focused in on the issues that matter to folks, which is whether it's access to primary health care, whether it's a home you can actually afford, or just the everyday costs that you're facing. And after 8 years of Liberal neglect and 4 years of broken PC promises, I think people are really seeing a real opportunity to see those issues addressed through Claudia and the NDP.
And now that you see these numbers starting to come in, what happens after today? What's your vision for the next few?
Well, again, I think it's the same part of the project, which is staying focused on those issues and getting as much as we can for Nova Scotians on those movement from this government on those issues, and also just making sure that more and more Nova Scotians hear Claudia's message, fighting for the issues that matter to them.
Thank you so much for joining me and breaking down those numbers some more. Let's head back to the desk.
All right, thanks so much, Sky. And David, let's go to you to talk about an unfolding storyline in Bedford Basin, and Bedford South to see what some of the results of there is looking like. PC gains there.
Okay, just some technical issues here, Paul. We're just sorting out. I wanted to run through, you were mentioning Bedford, you're riding Bedford Basin again. Tim Outhit is leading right now over the New Democrats. But I just also want to take a look at this part of HRM, sort of Bedford, Sackville, etc. So Bedford Basin, again, sorry, went there. That's Tim Outhit. Right next door, though, Bedford South. This has been a bit of a dogfight all night long. Right now, the PCs are ahead. Damian Stoyloff trying to take out the incumbent, Braden Clark. I'm going to do this, which gives me a look at how it's been going as we've been getting results in all night. We have had a couple of lead changes, but it is starting to widen a little bit, as you can see, for the PCs. We'll keep an eye on that one. And then we have a change here as well. In Hammonds Plains, Lucasville, Ben Jessam is the incumbent. Rick Burns, an IT consultant, is trying to take it for the PCs, and he's got a 236 vote lead over Jessam. Half the polls reporting here. This was a part of the province you guys both know there was some issues with wildfires. People were worried about property taxes, how that would be affected. And Tim Houston was in the riding campaigning with Rick Burns on Friday. Always pay attention to what the leaders are doing. And we just talked about Sackville-Cobequid a minute ago with David Hare, the NDP pollster. 52 vote lead over Paul Russell. No incumbent here. Paul Russell, another HRM councillor, trying to take it. So a tight race here, a tight race here. Right now, 143 votes is now the lead. That's trending well for Outhit, and that's sort of what's going on. This has been an important area for the PCs. They wanted to gain, but the NDP also want to show that they can win in the suburbs. Back to you guys.
Sackville-Cobequid there, Paul Russell. He was a municipal councillor, David, who just lost in the municipal election. Now he's running for the PCs and trailing. It was Paul Wozni, right? He was the teachers union president for so many years, I believe, in that riding right there. Take a look for me on. There we go. Yeah, 45.
Super
that's
close.
A tight race.
That's a tight race.
52 votes. That's a tight one. I wouldn't be surprised if we're not going to be able to call that before we go off air tonight. Again, those sorts of really close ones. The automatic recount kicks in at a very small amount, but 52 votes is they're going to take their time and one by one make sure everything works there.
Yeah, and Ben Jessam too, Hammonds Plains wildfires and things like that. Lots of big issues around property taxes for new home builds out there as well, David. And I know that the PCs have been really trying to make inroads in there tonight too.
Yeah,
so far, so good.
Yeah, exactly.
As David mentioned there, thank you very much, David. There are tight races here, and that's why this is still worth watching, of course, because it could change the numbers for the NDP, the PCs, maybe not so much for the Liberals. Let's check in on some of those tight races now. Moving first to Annapolis, David Balby leading by just 30 votes there, 44.6% over the Liberal incumbent.
Wow. As we just mentioned, Sackville-Cobequid, we're following this one very closely. NDP, Paul Wozni, former Nova Scotia Teachers Union president, very outspoken as you would have to be, I guess, in that role, but he was a pretty stern president in his...
He spoke a lot during COVID about education issues and teachers issues, so I think that really put him on the map over Paul Russell there.
Yeah, former councillor for Halifax there, Paul Russell. Bedford South, as we've been talking about as well, the Liberals trying to hang on to this one. Doesn't look good right now, although very close. Damien Stoiloff right there with 41.7%. As we mentioned earlier in the show, Tim Houston in that riding last week as well.
Sydney member 2, Derek Mumbercat, the Liberal incumbent, is hanging on by just over 100 votes there over the PC party candidate, and usually that riding favors the incumbent.
Halifax Armdale, Rod Wilson in the lead right now, and the incumbent there was Ali Diwali, currently in 3rd place right now in Halifax Armdale. Rod Wilson with 39.2% of the vote over Craig Myra with 36%, so that one's still pretty close too. What's the lead? 83 votes right there. So,
and we were talking about recounts. It's a mandatory recount when it's 10 votes difference. So that's what happens. And we did also talk previous, as we were planning tonight's broadcast, about what happens if there's a tie. And that's when they draw a name out of a box.
Unbelievable.
Literally. So I don't know if that's going to happen tonight, but we definitely have some close races there.
Yes, and a quick programming note before we go to Megan King at PC headquarters. We are going to end our coverage on our TV channel at Global News right at 10 o'clock Atlantic, but we are going to be continuing on our streaming services. Dare I say, we're going streaming, Heidi.
We're going streaming.
We're going streaming at 10 o'clock, so don't go anywhere. Get to your streaming device for that. But first, let's go to Megan King in Pictou.
Thank you very much, Paul and Heidi. There's no doubt that this has been a successful campaign, clearly with another majority for the PCs. I'm now joined with one of the guys that made it all happen, co-chair of the PC campaign, Cameron McKean. Can you tell me, Cameron, how did we get here? How are you feeling tonight?
We're feeling really good. Sense of relief, with all honesty. You start out election with a lead, and then you end up with an election with a bigger lead, so that's a good feeling. It's sort of a testament, you know, this is the best result an incumbent PC government has had since like 1984. So it's quite something about Tim Houston's leadership and how Nova Scotians want him to continue as Premier and keep doing what he's been doing the last 4 years.
You mentioned the leadership, Houston's role in all of this, but how do we get this level of engagement from PC supporters? What do you think happened in this election that made it work?
I think, you know, obviously, I think as the campaign went on, the other two leaders weren't as well known as Tim, so they looked at them, but then they decided, no, Tim's numbers went up all throughout the election. I think he was spectacular in both the debates. He came across as a statesman. He knocked on probably more doors than any leader, and I just think it's a testament to him and the way he's been leading the province for the last 3 to 4 years.
And do you think this type of overwhelming majority, we hear more screams about it, do you think this speaks to what Nova Scotians want and that they're getting it?
They want Tim Houston to keep doing what Tim Houston has been doing, and he's going to, and it's a great thing for our party, our province, and for the campaign team.
Absolutely. Thank you very much
No
for your
problem.
time. Take care. All right, you heard it here first. It sounds like at least this group of PC campaigners do believe that the right decision was made and that they put on the effort just for that. I'll send it back to you now in studio.
All right, thanks so much, Megan King at PC headquarters in Pictou.
Seat count for the PCs right now, 41, NDP 9. So things are changing. Let's check in with Lori and David Aiken to talk about leaders' speeches as we expect some of those shortly.
Yeah, see, I told you guys, wait on the whole, was this paying off for Houston? What changed was right down here, Clare. The riding of Clare just reported. It was, in fact, I'll show you right now. The riding of Clare started out Liberal, then there was a lead change. Now, there's not a lot of polls in here down there in Clare, if I could just pop it up again. Just 6 polls, but that was a Liberal incumbent, Ronnie LeBlanc, and that's where, that's probably why you saw the cheering, because that's new coming in. Okay, Lori, you're Zach Churchill. Down there next door to Clare in Yarmouth, Nick Hilton has a 211 vote lead on Zach Churchill. The window's closing. 33 polls of 40 are in. What's Zach got to say tonight? What are you expecting? What should he say, and what are you expecting? You're probably you get two different answers.
Well, I mean, clearly this is not the night that Zach Churchill wanted at all, and it's too early to tell, I think, at this point definitively whether he's going to hang on to a seat. It doesn't look great, and so I think for him, he wants to come out. I think it's really important for him to thank his candidates, thank his volunteers, thank his staff, for everybody who did a huge lift on this election. Just because they didn't go their way doesn't mean they didn't work really, really hard, and so I think it's really important for him to show his gratitude for that. I think it's important for him to reflect on the fact that this is, in fact, the result, and that, on some level, it probably isn't a massive shock, even though it's going to feel bad. It's still, this was kind of a long time coming, in the sense that it seemed that the stronger majority for Houston was building. This question about whether the Liberals or the NDP were going to form the official opposition, the Liberals lost that.
Right. And so who, like voters, presumably most of them in Halifax, saying who could be the most effective opponent for the guy I don't want to be premier, Tim Houston? Well, it's not you, Zach. It's going to be Claudia Chender. So, I mean, it seems inevitable he's going to have to say that I'm not going to be the leader, particularly if he doesn't win his seat. But as I was saying earlier, even if he comes back and they're now 3, just becomes untenable. And
but
that's
what
probably
about this,
something he can
David,
do
too,
tonight.
is that, you know, we have Ian Rankin and Derek Mombercat right there. Ian Rankin's already been the premier of Nova Scotia for the Liberals, so that leaves Derek Mombercat as a potential leader. They go outside someone who's elected and then try and win their riding in the next election kind of thing, like a Susan Holt type deal in New Brunswick?
If you're the Nova Scotia Liberal Association or the Liberal Party or whatever, certainly there's no hurry. You don't need a new leader tomorrow. There's going to be 4 years of Houston. I would bet it might be 2 years from now before they would wrap up a race. But they'd still want to have some runway for that next leader to prepare for the next election. Wouldn't you think, Laurie?
100%, because even back when Stephen McNeil decided in 2020 that he wasn't going to keep going and they had to have this impromptu leadership race because it seemed like the party didn't see it coming, even then there was crickets just waiting for people to come forward, and eventually it was 3 people who had been in Stephen McNeil's cabinet. It seems to me the rebuild for the party never quite took off since Stephen McNeil left, and so if the party is just in 3rd place, they're far behind. Clearly Houston has got a huge majority. Clearly Claudia Chender is setting up, you know, that's going to be the race the next time. The Liberals have got a lot of time to figure out how they want to pitch this and, you know, whether they want to go in a really different direction.
And over the weekend, you and I were talking about Angela Simmons, who ran against Zach Churchill for the leadership. She had won in Preston, and she didn't win the leadership, and she had thought she was representing the kind of real change the party needed.
Exactly.
The party stuck with the guy who'd been in multiple cabinets, and now maybe Angela Simmons' message, 2 years ago, was the message that the party really needs to hear now.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think they're going to be, you know, like it or not, at this moment where they have to rebuild. And so, yeah, we'll see what happens.
Okay, back to you guys. We're waiting to see if Zach speaks and what he says.
Yeah, exactly. Looking forward to that. And that's what you're going to find on our streaming services as well. The speeches from Zach Churchill, from the Premier, Tim Houston. We're expecting Claudia Chender as well. But that kind of wraps up the television portion of Decision Nova Scotia. Heidi, it's been a great ride for the 2 hours here on TV.
It has indeed, but it's not over yet. Head to our streaming services to continue watching Decision Nova Scotia 2024.
And we are streaming on the Decision Nova Scotia here, and that's Paul Brothers and Heidi Petracek. I might be streaming till 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. Heidi, who knows?
We'll just keep you
Might be
going
another
straight.
8 hours.
It'll be more fun that way.
I may not go home. As we wait for the speeches, of course, we really want to see what Zach Churchill has to say, given the seat count that we have below us right here, 40 to 10 to 2 to 1. I want to say, can you believe it? But we kind of can believe it, given some of the polling numbers the past week or so.
More than one poll definitely suggested that this was in the cards. Let's check in on some landslide victories now for the PC party. In particular here, Colton LeBlanc, landslide for him, declared elected at more than 82% of the vote in Argyll.
And Queens, Kim Maslin re-elected, 80.3% of the vote, 3,423 votes with a lead of almost 2,500 in Queens.
Cumberland South, the Minister of Natural Resources and Renewables, Tory Rushton, declared elected with 79.3% of the vote there in a sizable lead.
Yes, and Guysborough Tracadie, a bellwether riding. This usually is a predictor of the government, and it's Greg Morrow with 79.7% of the vote in Guysborough Tracadie.
In Shelburne, Nolan Young has handily been declared elected at 76.7% of the vote.
So let's get some more reaction from David.
Exactly,
Aiken.
and talk about what we're still waiting
Okay,
for,
we
because
gotta go to
I've seen David's prepping the board there, but I know that we are still waiting on some results from some ridings, and that's what David's looking at.
I am. We got a 1-vote lead here in Clayton Park West for the New Democrats, and that would be a big get for the New Democrats. So that's sort of pushing further out. There's no incumbent here. Adegoke Fadari is the PC candidate, and Elizabeth E. Domondon is the Liberal. That was the Liberals won it last time around.
Yeah, Rafa Di Costanzo.
That's it. And she just didn't feel, she's had some health issues and didn't feel that she was ready to go. at a snap election. So they passed the torch. And right now, if this holds for the New Democrats, they'll be jumping up and down at the Marriott in downtown Halifax. But it's a 1-vote lead right now in Clayton Park West. So that's one. Now, we have some results, I think. You see this funny symbol here? That means too close to call. I would say Clayton Park West, too close to call. Or, pardon me, this means tied. And look at this. Sackville-Uniacke, our first results of the night, 101 to 101. Thomas Strappenberg, who, by the way, is an artificial intelligence professor at Dalhousie. He's a smart guy. Needs some more AI to help him with this, though. 101 to 101. PC, Brad Johns, incumbent, tied with Lisa Blackburn. So let's keep an eye on that. It's our first result from Sackville-Uniacke. As I was mentioning earlier, it does look like it's going to be orange or blue. Oh, there we go. It has just flipped to Lisa Blackburn. She's got a 3-vote lead.
David, this is an interesting one, too,
38.
because Lisa beat Brad Johns municipally to win her municipal spot, and now they're duking it out provincially.
That is a neat little, it is sort of a neat sideline, and it seems to me in Nova Scotia that the municipal councils are a great feeder for essentially the provincial legislature. So a lot of these people have seen each other maybe in HRM or other councils around the province. Here they are. So we're going to keep an eye on that. That's very much in play, and now that puts the New Democrats at 11. Now, we were waiting for that, and the only other place that has not reported any results yet is way up at the tip of Cape Breton. I got to press that tip right there. There it is. Glace Bay Dominion. We don't have a single vote reported yet. People have counted them, I'm assuming. I'm kind of curious, and we'll ask Elections Nova Scotia what's going on up in Glace Bay. John White is the incumbent. So let's, again, we'll make an assumption the incumbent holds. That would put the PCs at 41. We're now getting into John Buchanan territory of the early 80s in terms of significant majorities for Tim Houston's PCs. But that, I wanted to point that out. I'm glad to see we got something going on in Sackville-Uniacke, and that close race in that is something else in Clayton Park. 2-vote lead now. There you go. While we're chatting, Wendy
How many
Hood
polls
Morris,
are reporting? I can't see that.
Quite a few. 23 of 36 polls reporting. That's not a lot of votes for 23, if you ask me, in an urban riding, but 880 votes total for Wendy Hood Morris to 878 for Fedari, the Progressive Conservative. So that, let me once again, they're all about change. That was 4 years ago, 3 years ago, 2024, that's 2024. 2021, 2024. That's quite remarkable, isn't it? Just for Timberlea Prospect is it for Liberals in HRM. One, Timberlea Prospect. That's the other one is the Sydney member 2, way up there, Momberket's riding, and that's it. So Liberals just not there tonight at all. New Democrats, if they can take Clayton Park West and both Sackvilles, they will be very pleased with how things turned out for them tonight.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you very much, David. Hopefully by the next time we check in with David, we'll have some Glace Bay Dominion results there, because I am curious as to what's going on there. It has flipped Liberal NDP in the past.
Waiting for
before
some
it was
speeches
the PC
too, right?
candidate, and we are waiting for speeches, so stick around for that. We know they're coming. We heard Zach Churchill was going to be speaking, as well as Tim Houston, all potentially within the next 20 minutes to half an hour. So stay with us. It will be interesting to hear what they have to say.
Yeah, for sure. Let's update some of the leader boards, actually. Tim Houston, of course, once again returning as Premier of Nova Scotia, has been elected. No surprise there in Pictou East. Dartmouth South, Claudia Chender, looking like she'll form the official opposition right now, and easily elected in Dartmouth South once again.
Well, in Yarmouth, I know Zach Churchill is waiting to find out how he'll be faring, but it's not well right now. 50% of the vote going to the PC party's Nick Hilton with a lead of 178 votes there over Zach Churchill, who won the seat in a by-election in 2013 and has held it since. But the last time was a tight race for him, though. I know it did come down to some final counts.
And if you talk to people in Yarmouth as well, it was a lot of, if you follow the lawn sign game, there was a lot of blue lawn signs down there this time around Yarmouth. Zach, of course, has been Education Minister. He's been
Health Minister.
And Health Minister under McNeil government, and he's been there a long time. So sometimes it's flavor fatigue, it's a wanting change, and it's knowing that it's going to be a majority government. So why not, I guess, go with the flow? David, Laurie, what do you folks think?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're going to hear Claudia Chender speak, we hope, soon. And we were talking about what Zach Churchill's got to say. Claudia Chender's got a little happier speech he's going to give in front of a happy crowd. So what are you expecting to hear from Ms. Chender?
I think kind of on similar lines, she will thank her candidates, she'll thank her volunteers, she'll be very grateful, I think, for people who have given her a chance, who have put their trust in her, because I think a lot of it comes down to that. Given the fact that the parties were promising very similar things, a lot of it comes down to the leader. Who do you trust? Who do you trust to deliver this stuff?
There were great expectations for her when she was chosen leader. I mean, they had to execute on that campaign. They seem to have done so. This is HRM right now, where the pickup is. So there was pressure on her, and looks like the campaign and her team has delivered on that.
Yeah, and so she's going to talk about the issues that she wants to put forward. She's going to talk about the importance of holding such a big majority government to account, which is going to be difficult, I think, because if we're looking at if these numbers hold, they are in that territory of supermajority. And so even though we can see one party now is clearly pulled ahead as the official opposition, it's going to be hard to use those accountability mechanisms that are available in the legislature to hold such a big majority to account.
Right, and a supermajority essentially, if once you have 2/3 of the seats, you can essentially override some normal procedural rules. That people can filibuster and run out speech times just to be a little extra annoying to the government of the day. Houston won't have to worry about that. Just to quickly run through some close ones. It's a 3-vote lead for the New Democrats in Sackville-Uniacke. That is something we're going to watch, and super duper close in Clayton Park West, 2-vote lead there. Those are seats, I think the New Democrats, if they win those, they'll go, yes, we rolled and everything came up, sevens or whatever you want to call it. Those would be two that they'd be really happy to have.
Oh, 100%. And we can see, given the closeness, like even in the ridings where in those two where the Liberals are coming third, there's still quite a bit of support there. And so you can see the riding is really, some of these ridings are torn between the three parties. If you look back in the history of the riding, they've gone every which way. And so it's hard to predict. And I think probably in those cases, that momentum of the Progressive Conservatives and the NDP might be the ones that, to kind of drag those really toss-up ridings across the threshold for those parties.
And Paul and Heidi, as we wait for Claudia Chender's, I know the campaign, and we heard from some campaign strategists, with Sky talking about how it was very important for the campaign to introduce Claudia Chender to the electorate. This is another really good opportunity, this speech, because a lot of people may only tune in to the results show. That's all they want to see. They don't care about debates. So she has another platform starting tonight to really start to make the case that she can be the premier in waiting, although it might be 4 years. Back to you guys.
Well, it's just an interesting time when you are forming the opposition. You have 11 seats. You're down, 40 seats to 11, but you're considered it a big win. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a big jovial speech.
As David said, it's all about perhaps being a government in waiting, right? Which takes a few cycles. Let's not forget 2009 when Darrell Dexter's NDP, had the orange wave sweep through Nova Scotia and became the first NDP government in Atlantic Canada at the time. So, this could be about building, and building takes time. Let's talk about NDP gains here. We saw some where there could be gains. We're waiting on those close races, but in Fairview, Clayton Park, Lena Hamid is leading at 42% of the vote right there.
Patricia Arab in third place, the incumbent Liberal right there. Just another sign of the times for the Liberals tonight, including this one, Halifax Armdale, the incumbent Ali Duwali in third right now. Rod Wilson for the NDP with about 135 vote lead on the PCs there.
Sackville, Cobequid, this is a close one, 66 vote difference between Paul Wozni, the NDP candidate who is leading right now, and Paul Russell, the two Pauls, the PC candidate there.
And then we have Lisa Blackburn, Sackville-Uniacke with a 3-vote lead over Brad Johns.
And I slightly misspoke earlier. I believe a count has to happen at less than 10 votes. So that one would definitely qualify. As with this, Clayton Park West, Wendy Hood Morris leading in the NDP there by a mere 2 votes over the PC party candidate.
We may be streaming until 6 a.m.
And as we've been talking, the numbers at the bottom of your screen have also changed. The PC party now at 41 seats, the NDP at 11, although the Liberals, not much has changed for them at 2 seats.
And I think 39 is that super majority. Maybe we'll bring Laurie and David back in later to talk more about what that means.
Super
it's
majority,
not just a joke, it's a real thing.
And in 1984, it was John Buchanan who had 42 seats for the PC government of the time.
You can
so
bet
it'd be
the
interesting
Houston
to see if they want to hit that number. I'm sure they're watching. Sky Bryden-Blom is at NDP headquarters in Halifax, where folks are watching some of these close races, I'm sure. Let's check in with Sky.
Yes, Heidi, I honestly am having a hard time hearing you over the applause in this room as the NDP continue to make gains. I know there's still some close races going on, but the applause has not stopped in this room. And there's just a lot of excitement overall. As you know, that this was the first campaign with the leader, Claudia Chender, really leading there. And in addition to that, just taking a look around the room, like it is a sea of signs and applause. Yes, they just continue there. And we are hearing that Claudia will be taking to the stage quite soon, really in a matter of minutes. So it'll be interesting to see what she says. And actually, I'm hearing a lot happening behind me, so I am actually going to throw it back to you. And I'll chat later.
Okay, we'll check back in with Sky.
It sounds like Claudia Chender may be heading into the room.
That could
so
be
we'll
happening.
watch for that for sure.
Exactly. Or they're cheering for David Akin to start singing some Feist on the streaming. I'm not sure how it's going to go.
You know what? I've been a reporter at a campaign headquarters, and you'd much rather be where Sky is, even though, as you pointed out, they lost. I mean, the other team won a majority. But for New Democrats, across the country, second place is kind of often where they can go. They have won government before Nova Scotia, but getting to the official opposition was the campaign objective. They looks like they've accomplished that, and so they're very happy. Saw the same thing in Saskatchewan just 3 or 4 weeks ago, where the NDP were whooping it up at their thing, and they were facing another majority government of Scott Moe out there, but they'd increased their vote count. Hey, guess what? While we were talking, look at that. Right there we go. Glace Bay Dominion, we have our first results. So now we have results from every single riding. John White is the incumbent. As I was saying, that's what ticked on the bottom of your screen there. That's what got, I'm trying to figure out as I'm watching my monitor, 41 down there for the PCs. John White has a 100-vote lead over the Liberal David Alexander McLeod. Kathy Chapman is in third. This was the closest race in the province in 2024, in fact, or 2021. Let me take it back to 2021. John White won by 29 votes. John White over John Morgan over John. A lot of Johns. That was 2021. 2024 up in Glace Bay. John White ahead. So that's why we have the PCs now really in John Buchanan territory, the former premier in the 80s, sort of matched some of the majorities or close to what Robert Stanfield was getting back in the 60s. There's Claudia Chender now. You can see her in the bottom of the screen, and I'll bet Sky can hardly hear herself. You guys might be able to hear from the studio. I know it's not too far from headquarters there, the whooping and the hollering that's going on.
What are you expecting her to say, David?
Positive speech.
Yeah, you're expecting her, obviously. That's what she's going to be like, Arian. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I know David and Lori earlier were talking about how this is really her moment, really. She's been introducing herself throughout the campaign as she makes her way to the podium. And now this is her chance to speak to the people of Nova Scotia as leader of the official opposition. Last time there was a woman as leader of official opposition was Carla McFarlane for the PCs in 2018. So this is a rather historic moment for Claudia Chender as well, and a lot of excitement there at NDP headquarters, which is in Halifax.
David, you're going to say something there?
One of the things I've always found, guys, is that the people on the left want to love their leader. People on the right, conservatives, want somebody competent. Stephen Harper would be a good example of that. They just like the competence. But people on the left, you think of Jack Layton, and now here comes Claudia Chender, someone they really like. Here she is, the new leader of the official opposition, Claudia Chender of Dartmouth South.
Wow, I could hear you, and now I am so glad to be with you. Thank you so much. I want to thank our amazing team of candidates, campaign workers, and volunteers, and thank you to all of you. We did this tonight. And a huge congratulations to our incredible new caucus. Susan LeBlanc. Susie Hansen. Lisa LaChance. Let's cheer for Kendra so she can hear us in Cape Breton. And Krista Gallagher, where are you, Krista? Woo! And there are more to come, including, I'm told, Paul Wozni of Sackville-Cobequid. It's about time we got Sackville back. I want to give a special thank you to the people of Dartmouth South, and I know you're out there, for putting faith in me again to be your MLA. It is truly an honor to serve the community, and I am so excited to get back to Dartmouth. Thank you to my family, to Molly and Anna and Sam, and to my husband, Jamie, and my mom. I truly could not have done this without them. And thank you to all the campaign spouses and families and communities and supporters. True story, I ran into Susan LeBlanc's partner polling vote on my street at 7:45 this morning when I was walking my dog. And thank you to Nova Scotians across this province for putting your faith in our amazing team. I have spoken to Tim and to Zach, and I've congratulated them on their campaigns. And while we had hoped for a different result tonight, make no mistake, our vision for a different kind of government has struck a nerve. And I am here to tell you that the Nova Scotia NDP is on the rise. This province, including, I'm guessing, most of you, cast their vote for a government that actually cares about all Nova Scotians. One that is more honest, more responsible to you, the people we serve. Our campaign was one of positivity and possibility for all of us. Our vision, a government that would protect renters, build affordable housing, and ensure that Nova Scotians can actually find homes that they can afford, is possible. A province where Nova Scotians have consistent primary care is possible. And we will not stop until it is real. Because tonight we've made it clear that the Nova Scotia NDP, that our incredible team is the alternative. Tonight, our incredibly effective opposition has grown, and we are now the official opposition. I am very proud to be the first woman elected as leader of the official opposition. But in this, as in all things, including when I was the first woman House Leader and every other job I've had and that we have had and where we have been first, in this we stand on the shoulder of giants. And one giant in particular, and I think it's really important to say that without Alexa McDonough, we would not be here tonight. And our caucus will be there. We will show up to work next week and every day to work towards better, to fight for you, and to hold Tim Houston and his giant band of MLAs to account. My friends, while today marks the end of this election, it marks the beginning of the next one. And after 3 years, we know what we are getting from the Conservatives. Broken promises and backroom deals, and not a lot for the rest of us. And Tim Houston got away with it when the Liberals were in opposition. But that ends today. We will continue to fight for homes that people can actually afford. That's worth applause. For healthcare that you can actually rely on, and for a government that puts you first. Today is the beginning. Tomorrow we get back to work, and tonight, now, we celebrate. Thank you very much.
All right, official leader of the opposition, Claudia Chender.
First woman elected to that position.
That's right.
As she mentioned, I mentioned Carla McFarlane earlier, but she gained the position because Jamie Bailey had to resign.
Yeah.
So Claudia Chender, first woman elected as official opposition. A lot to unpack there in that speech, quite a celebratory speech. Let's talk to David and Lori now about some of the things she said, describing the party as one on the rise.
On the rise. I thought it hit all the right notes for her in that position. I mean, it was pretty much pitch perfect. It was short. I think people at this time of the night, they like the short speech. What did you think?
That's right.
Oh, 100%. They've got a lot to celebrate. She wants to get to that. She wants to get around the room, thank everybody. She wants to do that, she wants to get to it. And I think she hit the right tone in terms of setting the night as a win for the NDP. Even though they came second, this is a big night for them. That was absolutely mission accomplished for her.
And just quickly with results, I know we're waiting to hear the Premier speak now, but we did declare elected, or we're projecting elected, Paul Wozni in Sackville-Cobequid. And you probably heard Claudia from the podium say, I think we got Paul Wozni, we got Sackville back. And yes, this Sackville is back, but there's been a lead change up in Sackville-Uniacke. Brad Johns has a 63-vote lead over Lisa Blackburn. And if I take a look at where it's been all night long, that's what it's been. And we just saw that lead change a minute ago. Half the polls are in. So that race, they're going to be counting things a little while. And we also learned some new details, guys, about why it took so long for some ridings to report. And that's this. We'll learn more about this tomorrow from Elections Nova Scotia. But those e-ballots, there was some issues with reconciling what the e-ballot tabulator was saying with the paper results. And those who cast their vote on that tablet, you cast it on the tablet, but a paper record was immediately generated. And there was just some issues making sure that this new system was jiving with the paper. So probably more details on that tomorrow. But again, systems like that, you're going to expect little hiccups from time to time, right?
And that's how you build trust, is to let people know this is what's happening. We're going to verify with a paper ballot, and that helps people to build, again, that trust in the system that if we want to go in more of a direction of e-balloting, it can build some comfort with that.
Exactly, but you can see in some of these close races, again, like Sackville-Uniacke, where it's 174 votes now, 24 polls in, maybe that's an issue. So we'll keep an eye on that. But now I guess we think, I don't know, what's the Premier going to say? We haven't talked about that, Lori. What do you think the Premier's got to say?
I think he's going to be even more celebratory in tone than Claudia Chender. And I think, he's going to do the same thing, thank his volunteers, welcome his new members to caucus. And he's going to talk about having the trust of Nova Scotians to continue with his agenda, and looks forward to, having this new refreshed mandate to pursue his agenda and to go to Ottawa to fight with whoever the Prime Minister is going to be.
And in Ottawa on Wednesdays, tomorrow morning in Ottawa, it's caucus day, and that's when all the MPs will gather. And I'm pretty sure that all the Liberals, and there's going to be some Conservatives, obviously a lot of Conservative MPs from Nova Scotia, is, what does this mean? That Tim Houston now can talk to the federal government. And of course, we have this big issue right now. All premiers and Justin Trudeau are going to meet tomorrow afternoon to talk about Donald Trump's tariff threat. And does that change the discussion now? Tim Houston knows he's got all of Nova Scotia behind him with 42 seats now. That's that Sackville-Cobequid, Sackville-Uniacke one flipping. So it's a big deal. It's going to be, people in Ottawa are going to take a big notice of this. And he's, I don't know how he might sort of dance around and spike the football. That's the term, isn't it? Do we have a football? Who's got me a football? I'd spike it like Tim Houston. So.
He's more of a hockey guy. I know he's a Bruins fan. I'm not sure who his football team is, but...
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
He's, I'm trying to think. Empty net, no, anyways. So, yes, I guess
I got one for Lori, actually.
Shoot.
We just heard Claudia talking about, we're going to protect renters, affordable housing, consistent primary care. But when you have 9 seats and you're looking across the House there at 42 seats, isn't that supermajority that we talked about, Lori? Like, isn't there even less levers that the NDP can pull now to even slow down the mandate of the PCs at this point?
So this is it. And I mean, we typically don't see this kind of result, right? Where a party gets such a huge majority that it actually changes the governance inside the House of Assembly. But now we'll see that sort of thing potentially, where they don't have to give the opposition as much time. Some of those procedural elements that a lot of the time we don't even notice, it's possible that the opposition will have, again, as you say, fewer levers, less time, fewer ways to be able to drag debate out, slow down legislation, hold the government to account. So I think it's going to be up to Claudia Chender and her team to figure out how are they going to make this work in that environment, right? And continue to kind of breathe life in the levers and the tools that they do have, because we, up until now, have had quite a robust 3-party system in Nova Scotia for quite some time now, and we've seen that collapse in the last couple of hours.
One thing that having this 9 caucus, you get more money relative to the number of people in your caucus for things like research and policy development, and that'll be something that will help the New Democrats keep the government to account. And I guess we're up there in Pictou now. There he is. There he is. He looks happy, as it turns out.
Oh, absolutely, he looks happy. This is exactly what he wanted. And I think the quick election call, no question, it worked out for him.
42 seats. Wow. There's going to be a lot of people that will want to high-five their premier, family, friends, everybody. And Paul, Heidi, I forgot, where are we? We're at a community center. Are we in Pictou? Is that where we're at?
I believe it's the Pictou Wellness Center, which is kind of like a multi-purpose arena type deal.
Yeah, exactly. It's got a gym and community rooms and all this kind of thing. This is the same space he used last time around for his election win at that time in 2021.
So it's not the swanky downtown Halifax hotel the New Democrats have rented out. Instead, it's more a down-home.
Pretty state-of-the-art facility, though. It's pretty new. Like, it's pretty state-of-the-art. We're talking
there you go.
Infrastructure.
Exactly. I don't know if they bring in Pictou County pizza during the after party, because that's a thing in Nova Scotia. Of course, David, I don't know if you've had that, but I know Tim Houston is a fan of that Pictou County pizza and has his favorite spot in the neighborhood. So who knows? But no time for eating right now. It will be time for him to speak about his government's mandate moving forward. And we see that number at the bottom of the screen, I should mention, just waffling between 42 and 43. So there are still some close races that are affecting things.
Yeah. And he's got the Put Me in Coach rocking there by John Fogarty as well.
Yeah, center field.
Center field. He's already in Coach, though. Put me in again, I guess.
I'm going to assume that Tim Houston is going to be gracious in acknowledging Zach Churchill's contribution to the province over the decade or so that he was in. Certainly. And I think he's going to acknowledge Claudia Chender. Congratulations. And as Claudia mentioned, just across the isthmus, we saw Susan Holt become the first elected premier, female premier of New Brunswick. And now Nova Scotia has broken another glass ceiling. And those are important things to point out when that happens. So I expect he's going to acknowledge the new arrangement of the opposition. But then he's going to say, let's go Team Blue. That they really won by several touchdowns or scores if you're doing the hockey puck thing. And I'm just trying to find.
How many times will they say "made it happen"? I wonder.
We made it happen. That is the campaign slogan for sure. Yes. And of course, now I wonder, how do you hold a government to account when you've got such a huge majority? Because there are promises that I know people are still concerned about that they hope Tim Houston will follow through on, and that will be his job and the job of his, as Claudia Chender put it, giant band of MLAs. So a lot to unpack
just
there.
Just quickly, the reason we're up to 43, you might be going, what riding flipped? Here it is. It's the riding of Cole Harbour. Cole Harbour, Alex Stratford of the New Democrats had been leading. Leah Martin has just come into the lead. She's ahead by 180 votes, and sure enough, with almost 80% of the polls in, there's only 3 polls left. So maybe both of the Cole Harbours turn to the PCs. They had been both red. They were both Liberal 4 years ago. I keep saying 4 years ago, but it's really three.
Three and change.
Yeah, and both Liberals actually did not reoffer, so that's part of the factor here that I know Lori talked about before. You know, you leave a seat open like that, and it's ripe for the taking. And in this case, ripe for the taking for the PC Party of Nova Scotia. Both of those were considered, you know, NDP strongholds at one time in this province. So that's how things can flip.
I know we're talking provincial, but we're a year away from the federal. This is Darren Fisher's riding, the federal Liberal, and he had a lot of people just voted PC. Now, Tim Houston's PCs are not Pierre Poilievre's CPCs, I get that. And we know Jagmeet Singh came into Halifax to campaign with Claudia Chender in what is the federal riding of Halifax. It used to be Andy Fillmore's, and I'm pretty sure the federal NDP are thinking it ain't going to be a federal Liberal seat. So Tim Houston on the stage now. They've got the light show going. People are happy. People are thrilled. And we're going to hear from the Premier. 2 back-to-back majorities. That's hard to do. I don't care where it is. And to increase your majority even is tough to do.
In this day and age, incumbents are having a hard time. But here he is.
He's defying gravity and winning bigger.
Well, good evening. Thank you so much, each and every one of you. This is an incredible night. Thank you for being here to share it with each of us. Thank you to Cam and Tara. What an incredible campaign you ran. Thank you so much. And to the entire team in the central campaign office, wow, the hours, you go in there at 8 o'clock in the morning, they're there, 8 p.m. They were there. We worked, we were dedicated. Thank you for your efforts, for everything that you did for us. And of course, thank you to the good people of Pictou East. Thank you for continuing to believe in me. Thank you. Thank you for continuing to believe in me and my family. I love our community. I love how supportive you are of me and my entire family. I just love it. Your kindness means an incredible amount to me, to my entire family, and I look forward to continuing to serve you for 4 more years. And thank you to my incredible team in the Pictou East campaign and the constituency office. Many of you have dedicated your lives to supporting me. I can't thank you enough. Thank you. We love you. Thank you to all of the volunteers on every single campaign across the province. Nobody gets elected alone. Nobody gets elected alone. I certainly did not get elected alone, that's for sure. My mom and my sister are here. Love you guys. Of course, my dad and my brother, I hold them close to me. They're never far from my heart. My Art and Vern, my in-laws, we love you guys. Thank you for everything you do for our family. Paget and Zachary, you guys were kids when we started on this, and now look at them now, adults with their own careers, their own opinions. We love you guys. We're so proud of you. And Carol, my lovely wife, what a journey. What an incredible journey. None of this would be possible with you. None of it would be possible without my family. So thank you so much. I know this hasn't been politics. Not an easy profession. I know it's not easy on my family and the families of candidates across this province. So thank you for being so supportive to get us here where we are today. From the bottom of my heart, thank you to everyone in this room. It's the greatest honor of my life to take this stage tonight and serve every Nova Scotian as their Premier for 4 more years. So much is possible for this province. So much is possible for this province. And I promise you, I will do everything I can to make it happen for this province, make it happen for you and for your family. I will give you everything I have. Thank you to every Nova Scotian that exercised their right to vote. And I want to thank Nova Scotians for putting their faith in the PC party and re-electing an even larger PC majority government in this province. This victory is for each and every one of you. It's as much for the gentleman in Yarmouth who said, I'm voting for you when he opened the door. He said, I'm voting for you because that extra $100 a month that I get under your government means the world to me. That's a big difference in my life, he said, so I'm voting for you because of that. He actually tracked me down a bit later in the pouring rain. He came chasing after me in the pouring rain with his phone. And he said, my sister's on the phone. She doesn't believe I actually spoke to the Premier. Will you talk to her? This victory is for him and his sister and their whole family. And it's as much for them as it is for the gentleman in a building in Bedford who opened up the door, took one look at me and said, go away. NDP, he said. We had a little chat. When I left that apartment building, because it's still Nova Scotia, and because we're all still Blue Nosers, when I left that building a half hour later, he and his wife were standing in the lobby. And I wouldn't say she had him by the ear, but let me say I accepted his apology in my hallway. Folks, this victory is for both of them, because as their Premier, I will support them equally. We thank you. We traveled across this province from one end of this province and stood on, literally personally, I stood on thousands of doorsteps across this province, across our entire campaign. It's well into the hundreds of thousands of doorsteps that we stood on and listened to Nova Scotians and talked to Nova Scotians and sat at kitchen tables and sat inside porches and just talked about our province. And we shared a message with them, a message of positivity and potential. And tonight, they have sent us a message. And I received that message loud and clear. And that message is very simple. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going with the plan. Keep moving forward with the plan. And I want Nova Scotians to know, we will. We will. This victory is as much for the grade 4 student that stood in his driveway with his mom and told me how thankful he is for the school lunch program because he can have lunch with all of his classmates. It's as much because we did that. Together we did that. The PC party did that. It's as much for that grade 4 student as it is for their classmate who told me the food is gross. And you know what? It might be, but we're working on that. Folks, what we do in government matters. It matters. It matters to me, it matters to you, and it matters to every single Nova Scotian. So I thank Nova Scotians for putting their trust in us tonight. And I thank Claudia and Zach for putting their names forward and running spirited campaigns. I thank every single person, no matter the party, who had the courage to put their name forward on a ballot. It takes a lot of courage, and I have great respect for every person who puts their name forward. So I thank them for putting their name forward. And I especially want to thank our incredible slate of PC candidates. We assembled an incredible slate of candidates, serious candidates in every single constituency, and I want to say thank you to my 54 fellow Nova Scotia PC candidates. I was proud to stand beside them. I am proud of the campaigns they ran, and every one of them has a great reason to be proud. And I know some of them will be disappointed right now. And I share in that disappointment because I know the effort that they put forward. But I'm proud of that effort, and I thank them for having the courage to put their name forward. This province was built on hard work. It's all we know. It's all I know. It's what I was taught growing up. And every day that I have the privilege to serve you as your premier, I commit to work harder and harder and harder every single day. And my entire team buys into a very simple motto: more, faster. More, faster. Do more and go faster. And as I crisscrossed Nova Scotia, I was energized to see the local candidates working harder and harder and harder on every doorstep, doing their part to make it happen. And it is humbling to see the candidates, but the campaign volunteers, and every single one of you put your lives on hold and put faith in your candidate, but as leader, I feel it, to put your faith in me. And it means an incredible amount. And on behalf of all of us from the PC team and all of our campaign volunteers, I just want to say thank you. Tonight, Nova Scotians made a choice, and they chose our team to take Nova Scotia forward. We ran on a platform of make it happen, and I heard somebody. And as I walked in tonight, somebody said, well, you made it happen. And I want to say, yes, we did. But this is just obviously the start of the next phase of the Nova Scotia journey. Make it happen was never meant just to be about winning another mandate. Make it happen is about what we do with that mandate. And I want to tell you and your family that we will make a lot happen with this mandate, because that's what you have a right to expect. You and your family are counting on us to stand up for you, and we will. Whether that means standing up for veterans so they can wear their uniform wherever they want, whenever they want, with pride, and especially to a Remembrance Day service in Nova Scotia. We will stand up for the veterans of this province, whether it means standing up to the federal government when they try to rip Nova Scotians off with funding on the isthmus or a carbon tax that doesn't make sense. I will never let Ottawa take advantage of us without hearing from us. And I think the message that Nova Scotians delivered loud and clear tonight, the message that Nova Scotians delivered loud and clear, and the message that I received, stick to one agenda. And we have one agenda, and that's you, Nova Scotians. That's where our focus will always be. My promise to you is I will give you every single thing I have. I am going to work hard to do more and go faster. And I will always, every single day, be proud to be Nova Scotian, just like you are. And I will never apologize for standing up for Nova Scotia or for standing up for you. Thank you to the Nova Scotians out there tonight listening. Thank you. We're on a good roll. Let's keep it rolling. Let's make it happen. Good night, everyone. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, passionate speech there from Premier
spirited.
Tim Houston.
Mm-hmm. Lots of emotion in there when talking about some of the volunteers and family and friends and volunteers and and then got real heated there when he was talking about the isthmus, the federal government. He brought up the Remembrance Day service.
Exactly, that controversy
Which
that emerged.
Some people thought he was a bit too heavy-handed on his response to that.
But he got a huge cheer there when he mentioned that he would fight for veterans and cited that incident. And also talked about, he will not let Ottawa take advantage of Nova Scotia, quote, rip Nova Scotia off is how he put it. So a lot of passion there from Tim Houston and a solid commitment from him to keep moving the province forward.
Pressure's on now, though. He wanted to fix healthcare. Now he's got 4 more years to try and do that with all the other things that have bubbled up in the past 3.5 years.
And now he has an affordability
housing
crisis he has to deal with, and housing as well. So there's going to be a lot for the official opposition, Claudia Chender, and her MLAs to talk about, but the PCs with a massive majority, 42 seats right now, although we've seen the count change back and forth because there are still some close races that we will talk about. And so that's Tim Houston tonight, really putting forth what his plan is for the next 4 years for Nova Scotians.
We understand that we're waiting for Zach Churchill's speech as well in Yarmouth, which will be a totally different vibe than we just got from the Premier, as you would expect. And from what I'm looking at right now, Zach's still trailing in Yarmouth to Nick Hilton by a couple hundred votes. It looks like maybe if David and Laurie are there, they can come in to provide some more context on that or not. I'm not sure, but we're still waiting for Zach. Yeah, David, Laurie, go ahead.
Yeah, we're here. I'm just on Houston's speech. There was a couple of nice anecdotes in there. People always like that, little campaign trail anecdotes. But yeah, he really got fired up there at the end about wanting to stick it to Justin Trudeau, who he's going to be talking to tomorrow night at 5 o'clock. Topic of the agenda there is Donald Trump. But what did you make of what he had to say here?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I thought that Houston's speech was very obviously uplifted. He's excited. This is exactly what he wanted. This is exactly why he called this election. I also think it's important to note that his speech was quite unifying in that you didn't hear any division in terms of the province, his opponents. I mean, that would have been probably pretty poor form given by how much he won. But we are living in very divisive political times. And the fact that he, again, didn't go that route, he thanked his opponents. He thanked everybody who ran. I think it's important to take a moment and say, hey, we don't have to be divisive and polarizing and hateful to one another. We can totally just live in, and win in a kind of positive environment where you just acknowledge this was a race. We all tried. Here's the result.
We go back to how's Claudia Chender going to face off against this. Claudia Chender should put some markers down right away. Oh, are we getting Zach Churchill? We're getting Zach Churchill. We're now back to Victor. There he is. He's got one of his kids is sort of holding on there. I'm assuming that's one of his kids holding on to him there that he's coming in with. So we're going to hear Zach Churchill's speech. Usually, you guys know this, the way it works is the third place finisher speaks first, then the second place finisher, then the champ, the Premier, is usually the last to speak. But in this case, I guess Zach, and I'm just taking a look right now as we watch him come to the stage, there are still 5 more polls to report in Yarmouth, and he is about 178 points behind the PC challenger. But it's pretty clear he's not going to be the Premier, and we will likely be hearing about his decision about whether he's even going to be the Liberal leader at the end of this speech. So that's what we're waiting to hear, and there he is. He's got a microphone in front of him, and that usually means it's time to get going. So let's listen to Zach Churchill.
Thank you so much for waiting for me tonight. I really appreciate it. Is this on? Listen, folks, this wasn't the result that we wanted as a party. But I'll tell you, we left it all on the ice out there. We fought hard. And I have to say, I'm so proud of the candidates across this province that stood for office, that really stepped up, showed an incredible amount of bravery and tenacity. People who just really care about their communities and want to help their province. And I'm so sorry that I couldn't get this over the line for them. But hey, it happens. And, sometimes you lose. But I'm really proud of the campaign that we ran. It was built on ideas, on policies, and that's what we kept it about the whole way through. It wasn't about personal attacks. It wasn't about mudslinging. It was about ideas that could really help people. And I think that really matters because that's when democracy works the best, folks. That's when it works the best, and that's when we get the best out of it. I want to congratulate Premier Houston. I want to congratulate Ms. Chender. They ran incredible campaigns, and the people of Nova Scotia have certainly decided who they want to lead this province. And we respect the voters' decisions and accept with humility in our hearts and with peace in our hearts what they've decided tonight. And that's our job now. And I know a lot of people will have a lot of theories on why this happened. But at the end of the day, this was my responsibility. And this loss belongs to me and me alone. And I'm okay with that. But we've got to move forward as a party and as a community. I really want to thank our local campaign team, family, friends, the staff that came down here that have fought so hard, not just this election, but for the last 14 years as I represented this area. It's been an incredible journey, honestly. It's been such a rewarding job. In the honor of my life to serve the people of Yarmouth, to represent them in the capacity as MLA, and to be the first party leader from Yarmouth as well. I'm just sorry I couldn't be the first premier from Yarmouth. We'll have to wait another time for that. But I do, my kids are sleeping because it's late, but I do hope that they can hear this someday, is, you know, loss is a part of life. Cece's still awake. Loss happens. Sometimes you lose. You get knocked down, and the most important thing is getting back up and how you get back up. And I want my kids to know that. I want the party to know that, and all of you who fought so hard on this campaign to know that. We've got knocked down, but we will get back up. A real special thank you to my mother and my family and everybody who fought so hard here every single day of this campaign while I was out across this whole province. My God, I'm so lucky to have the love of my family and the support of my family in my life. It really means the world to me. And I may just be at more Sunday dinners now as a result of tonight. My incredible wife, Katie, the real love of my life. The best decision I ever made was asking that wonderful woman to marry me. And I couldn't have done any of this without you, honey. And listen, sometimes even when you lose, you win. And well, tonight we suffered a big loss, and that's a burden that I certainly will carry with me for a long time. I think we're just going to win some more time together. And whatever happens next, honey, I'm excited to enter into this next phase of this incredible adventure of life with you, whatever that looks like. I love you so much. And I'm so proud to be your husband. I don't know if the final numbers are in yet for our local campaign. Does anybody know? We're still close, so we're going to wait around and see what those are. But I want to congratulate Nick Hilton and his campaign team on running a really strong race here. And if they win tonight, I'll be the first to go down there and congratulate them. And I encourage everybody else to do that. This has been an absolute honor, folks. It's been an honor leading this party. It has been an honor representing this area. And certainly I will be taking some time once we know what the final tally is tonight to discuss my future, of course, with my family, with the local association, with the party, and with those that are remaining in our caucus. And we'll certainly inform folks on what that decision is later on. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you for the incredible support over these 14 years. And to the people of Nova Scotia, thank you for this incredible honor of being able to serve as the official opposition leader. And again, I want to congratulate the Premier and Claudia Chender on their big wins tonight. Thank you.
A very personal speech there from Nova Scotia Liberal leader Zach Churchill, who, as you heard there, was wondering what the results is for his own local campaign in his riding of Yarmouth. He is trailing at this time, as you saw when we put those numbers on the screen.
Tough spot for him right there.
Hard news for him. David, Lori, I mean, what do you think of this speech? I mean, obviously he's putting it all in himself, but, you know, where does the responsibility lie when it comes to this Liberal loss? I don't know if David and Lori are there, if they're hearing me, but we are watching Zach Churchill.
Yeah, it does,
make his
to
way
answer
through
your
the crowd.
question, Heidi, sorry, to answer your question, it does, as he said, his responsibility. He's the leader. But you can kind of also blame Ian Rankin and his team for the lackluster campaign last time, and maybe even Stephen McNeil for leaving things the way he did. I don't know, Lori. His speech, you're right, heartfelt was the word. It didn't sound scripted. It sounded very much from the heart. He was bouncing around a bit. I am a little surprised that he thinks there's some sort of option out there where he's still the leader. He said he has to talk about his future, that he didn't just make that clean break tonight. But give the guy, I guess, a day or two or a couple of days.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I don't think there was anything scripted about that. It was very much from the heart. I think he spoke with a lot of honesty and humility about what he's feeling right now. The fact that he took it on himself, you know what, like, that's exactly what the leader's supposed to do. The leader can't point the finger to anybody else no matter what happened. But I agree with you, David. Like, the Liberal Party has been crumbling for a while now, and this is not all on Zach Churchill's shoulders, even if he does honestly the right thing and take it that way. I think you can look at the fortunes of the Liberal Party across the country and say there's probably a little bit of this. There's a little bit of it that Justin Trudeau is, you know, he's carrying that baggage as well, and that did not help Zach Churchill, obviously.
Yeah, again, I go back to, I don't think the party was prepared for the, quote, surprise election. Remember, we started this broadcast by saying how it was the least surprising surprise election, and they should have been perhaps a little bit better prepared. You know, so they lost, and that's it. And we've got up on my screen, oh, there it is on your screen too. Right now it's a 178 vote lead that Nick Hilton of the PCs, the nurse at Yarmouth Regional, municipal councillor, I think he's a golfer, a curler, and he's looking to replace a guy who's had that seat since 2010, Zach Churchill. Now, 35, if you can see those numbers, 35 of 40 polls have reported. So there's still 5 polls out there, and we're not sure which. Are they polls with a lot of votes in them? Are they advanced polls, which would have a lot of votes? And then Zach might pull things ahead. We're not sure. The lead has been pretty steady, as you can see, for most of the night. When the first results in, 50% of the polls, and Hilton's had the lead all night long in this riding. So, yeah, we'll wait to see that's out. But, I mean, if you take a look, this is the map of mainland Nova Scotia. And here it is in 2021, and there it is in 2024. Just zero performance. They probably won a lot of silver medals. I heard that from some campaigners before this. They won a lot of silver medals, and in our system, doesn't count for anything.
That's it. It doesn't count. You have to come first.
You have to win the gold.
Yep.
Yeah, and the PCs are winning right now, 42 to 10 to 2 to 1. And let's take a look at, we haven't talked much about popular vote yet, historic popular vote. We can bring in those numbers as well for Nova Scotia. And as we take a look in 2024, the PCs, of course, you would think with such a strong majority that they would have garnered such a historical popular vote, 53.6% for the PCs. The Liberals down, of course, to 22.1%. And the NDP at 20. Whoa, so NDP and Liberal tied at 22.1%, yet the NDP ahead by 8 seats.
Yeah, exactly. That's how the system works.
Yeah.
Exactly. Popular vote does not necessarily translate into seats, but it does call into question, you know, how many votes are being split between the NDP and the Liberals in terms of the popular vote. Interesting to note too that PC popular vote is quite historic for them. When they won last time, they had 38.4% of the popular vote, which is actually the smallest amount of the vote share for a majority government. So they really gained in the popular vote this time around for sure.
I'm interested to see how voter turnout is too once we get the results from Elections Nova Scotia.
Exactly, and we talked about voter turnout earlier again, the lack of voter information cards. I did talk to some people today who felt like they weren't sure exactly where they were going to go, but is it enough to be statistically significant? Perhaps not. That was just anecdotal. David, I mean, I find that map behind you so stark when you show the difference in the party colors there to really show what has happened here tonight.
yeah, remember we said at the beginning of the night the path to power for the Liberals clearly was a bit of a pipe dream. They had to win the Valley. They had to win South Shore, going up to Central Nova. So let's do this one more time and let's run through some of the places where this red disappeared. And probably a couple of surprising spots is the seat of a former Premier, Stephen McNeil, Annapolis, where David Bowlby looks to be knocking off the incumbent Carmen Kerr. Haven't projected that elected yet. Of course, there's Zach Churchill down in Yarmouth. That's a Liberal leader losing there, but also losing the riding of Clare next door. Right now, yep, Ryan Robichaud, we project him to be elected, defeating the incumbent Ronnie LeBlanc. I'm just going to go back, and now we want to get into, I think, HRM, where there's, whoops, there we go back one more time. Halifax, thank you very much, 2024. And we take a look at the riding of Bedford Basin. That's Kelly Reagan's old riding. She had that for a long time. And it's Tim Outhit, who looks like he is going to win, 36 of 42. We stay in Bedford South, where the incumbent Braden Clark looks like he may lose. That's only a 105-vote lead, so who knows, it could come out, but PC's ahead. We stay in the suburbs, and these are the kind of seats, exactly the kind of seats that Tim Houston wanted to win. Suburbs in Halifax, Hammond Plains, Lucasville. Rick Burns winning there, or is ahead by 543 votes over the incumbent Ben Jessom. Halifax Atlantic staying PC. Remember, this was the seat that Brendan McGuire won as a Liberal for 3 years ago, and he's come back and winning or leading pretty heavily over the New Democrats. Liberals in third in Halifax Atlantic. So that just gives you a bit of the flavor. And once again, to back and forth, 2021, woo! Liberals in Halifax. 2024, not so much. So a lot of regions to rebuild, people to rebuild. One of the things we haven't talked about too is for Claudia Chender and the NDP, candidate recruitment becomes a lot easier. Even though you're only 10 against 42, it's still a lot easier when the official opposition to try and bring on good new candidates, which help you get to the next level. It's going to be really tough. If you're a local mayor or a city councilor and the next leader of the Liberals comes over and says, "Do you want to run for us?" It's like, I'll pass. I'll maybe wait till the next time. Candidate recruitment is going to be a real challenge for the Liberals when they're at just 2 seats.
As you mentioned too, it's like 2 elections down the road for Claudia Chender, right? Mission accomplished on this one. Now that you're opposition, and now you build towards making some real inroads 4 years down the road, which leads to that recruitment. So
that's it.
Yeah, interesting story.
And I wonder, before we let David go there, I just do wonder how many recount requests there are going to be, if we're going to be seeing that with some of these tight races. David, what do you think there?
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, it's not going to change the big picture, which is a big majority for the PCs. There's a couple of ridings that are very close. And the one that popped back and forth, why do we go to 42? It was in my head a minute ago. Oh, it was
actually, I can bring in Clayton Park West here too if you want to. There it is, yeah.
There it is, exactly. That was the one that flipped. 23 votes is the lead for the New Democrats there. So there's going to be a couple of places where there might be a recount, something might flip. But again, the big picture is not going to change. PC majority, NDP opposition, Liberals looking for a new leader.
Yeah. And Liberals were the incumbents in Clayton Park West, but we already mentioned Rafa Di Costanzo not reoffering there, and Wendy Hood-Morris in the lead by 23. We can take a look at some other close races too while we're still here. As mentioned, Clayton Park West, Wendy Hood-Morris in the lead, 23 votes. So we might not know till tomorrow whether or not that one. In Bedford South, the lead is, what is that, 105 right now for Damian Stoylov over the incumbent Braden Clark there.
And this really means that there are still races that are up in the air, like in Halifax, Armdale there, a 135 vote difference between the NDP candidate Rod Wilson and the PC party candidate.
And then in Cole Harbour, which we've mentioned was Tony Ince's riding, not reoffering for this election. It's Leah Martin right now. It was Alex Stratford earlier in the night.
Yeah, it has flipped back and forth throughout the evening, so it just shows how close it is. And in Yarmouth, we are keeping an eye there on the incumbent Zach Churchill's riding. We heard his speech there. He wasn't even keeping track of his own race.
No. Who wants to answer that question?
No, Nick Hilton is ahead there, but again, it's by 178.
Anybody know how we're doing? It's like crickets.
Yeah, you don't want to interrupt his speach to be giving him the hard numbers,
Zach.
that's for sure. I'm sure he knows by now. And again, we'll be watching all these races throughout on Global News, so you can check online to get latest numbers as well as they continue to come in overnight. David and Lori have been really superstars tonight, keeping track of all this and the changeable conditions and the changing numbers. Final thoughts from you guys?
I'll let you go ahead, Lori. What do you think? There's no big change, but some change.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big change for me is you see this end to the three-party system. And I think, that's part of the reason why we've seen the parties run very close campaigns, not huge ideological differences between them. And now it'll be interesting to see a solid, really big majority and a kind of clear opposition. One-on-one. The Liberals are going to be in the woods for a while. Let's see what this does in terms of civility. Let's see what this does in terms of policy, and whether Chender, if we're standing here in 4 years' time, where she is at that moment.
I'm going to say, Tim Houston, congratulations for defying gravity, and that gravity being everywhere in the world, including here in Canada, in every election this year, the incumbent has either lost, that's Blaine Higgs in New Brunswick, or taken a haircut, that's Scott Moe in Saskatchewan or David Eby in BC. So here we have an incumbent that not only won, but almost set a record, a 40-year record that John Buchanan set to increase his majority. That's pretty significant right now in this age of angry voters, upset voters. There's still a pandemic hangover. People are still frustrated at governments. And as Tim Houston said tonight, this is important to demonstrate that government matters. Government can work for people. He told a couple of anecdotes about that. But here we are. Take note, an incumbent not only won, but crushed it and won a bigger majority. There's an incumbent in Ottawa. His name is Justin Trudeau. He thinks he can pull it off in a year's time. Maybe he takes heart from Tim Houston's victory. I don't think he should, but nonetheless, there you go, an incumbent crushing it, and we haven't seen that around the world and here in Canada all year.
And David, the floor is yours. You can now sing some Feist Mushaboom if you want.
I'm going to fire it up on the old YouTube here, and that will be like as we go out sort of thing. Sure. The Mushaboom election. That's what they'll be calling this.
That's
the
right.
Mushaboom. You remember when Tim Houston won the Mushaboom election?
Mushaboom election. I'm printing T-shirts as we speak. All money
Good
to
idea.
charity.
Interesting, though, we had to wait an hour, though. It kind of added to the drama for that big results dump coming in after 9 o'clock. That was kind of a different way to do things.
Yes, it's been great to have David and Lori with us. So I don't know if we get a chance to say goodbye to them there, but thank you both for joining us. Much appreciate the expertise. Global News Chief Correspondent David Akin and Lori Turnbull, political scientist at Dalhousie University. Appreciate their time very much.
Yeah, exactly. And final thoughts, I guess, for us now. Just wanted to say, everybody behind the scenes, we have 18 to 20 people here who you don't see on camera that have done just an amazing job making all of us look good out here for the last 2.5 hours. And it's just been great to be part of it. It's been part of something, real big. We can feel it all weekend long with our rehearsals, and it was great to present this tonight.
Just as political leaders have their team behind them, we have a team behind us as well. Exactly. Our own caucus, so to speak, that helps make this broadcast happen. And of course, you, the viewers, for tuning in. We appreciate it here at Global News on what has been an exciting and historic night.
I got to go, Heidi, because I got to be back. Global News morning is at 6 a.m., so it's going to take me a half an hour to drive.
Does that mean I get more pizza?
I'll see everybody back here at 6.
What?
I'm going to get Alexandra's pizza.
Are you going to bring some here?
Yeah.
That's Paul Brothers, ladies and gentlemen.
Decision Nova Scotia. Go ahead. Take it away, Heidi. Finish up.
Global News. Decision Nova Scotia 2024. Thanks for joining us. Pizza's on Paul. Have a great night.